we will formally call this meeting to order at 8:33 a.m. We will start the meeting with a prayer from our chaplain, Mr. Hawkins. If we will all stand, please.
Good morning. Let us pray. First and foremost, Father, we thank you for this day. You have declared that this is the day that the Lord has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Today, leaders of our city meet for the purpose of hearing the request of concerned citizens, making decisions that will affect our families, our finances, and our future. Therefore, I pray that those that are in authority in this city, and I pray and I lift up the mayor, her staff and assistants, the city council, the city manager, and every person and department that is instrumental in leading and directing our city. I pray that you would bless them to work together in unity. May you keep division and political dissension from among them. And I pray that you would give them godly wisdom and directions and instructions on how to lead and manage and operate this city and its departments. I pray, Lord, that you would give these leaders knowledge, insight, and guidance on how to deal with drugs, violence, crime, and other problems and issues facing our city and its people. I pray for the police chief and the police force, the fire department, and all the first responders who serve in our city. And lastly, I pray, Lord, that you would bless our city with economic prosperity. May you draw in and attract to our city industry, businesses, corporations that will produce jobs and revenue and help it succeed and progress and grow. I commit all these things to you, and regardless of how things may look on the natural, I confess to you that your word and that you are well able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that we can ask or think. Bring these things to pass, everything that I've prayed for this city council meeting today. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. God bless you all.
This morning, we will have our pledges led by Central High School 2018 varsity football captains, seniors gunner coach Dylan Green, Maverick McIver, and Jackson Tim. Welcome, guys. Let's turn around and do it. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Thank you very much. Great. You may be seated. This is worthy of an announcement. There are no proclamations or recognitions today, so we will move into the agenda. At this time, we will ask that everyone make sure that your cell phones are on silent, and we will open the meeting up for public comment. Issues or items that are not on the regular agenda may be raised by the public at this time. Citizens should speak from the podium, begin by stating their name, and limit remarks to less than 3 minutes. Council members may request that a discussed item be placed on a future agenda. The council takes public comment on all regular agenda items during the discussion of those items. Do we have anyone who would like to come forward and offer public comment today? Please come forward. I'd like you to state your name, please.
Hi, my name is Sharon Troy. I work as the housing navigator for Disability Connections here in San Angelo. And after being a caseworker for a year there, I am now the housing navigator, as I said, and my job is to help consumers who are exiting nursing homes and hospitals to find affordable and accessible housing in the community. And we have consumers come in and call our office on a daily basis who struggle to find that type of housing. I have a gentleman in a nursing home right down the street here right now that he can afford an apartment, but he can't fit his power chair in almost all of the apartments in the bathroom specifically. And so there's a strong need for this. And at Disability Connections, we're about helping people live as independently as they want to. And we have helped many, many consumers remain in their homes with supports and devices we can help them receive who otherwise would be in the nursing homes. My job is also to work with property developers and apartment managers on having increased units that are accessible. And I have documentation with me that proves that if you build apartment complexes from the ground up as accessible, it is literally pennies on the dollar to make them accessible from the ground up. It is not, as expensive as people believe. And, I actually have those statistics with me. Standard construction rate and accessible. So I do have the numbers that I can provide to you. And also, I personally live in an all-bills-paid apartment myself. I have for the last 4 years, and I just moved into Rio Concho Manor this past weekend because I want to save money. So I've downsized into a studio apartment because I wanted to. And I previously managed the Salvation Army shelter for a year and a half. And with the recent announcement about the shelter closing for renovations, I know personally that that building was in dire need of that. And so I'm passionate about helping the homeless. I helped a lot of people when I worked at the shelter move into permanent housing. And it's not just providing a home, it's casework, it's helping that individual remain in that home. And a lot of those people are still in their apartments as we speak. So I'm all about working with the community on trying to end homelessness and trying to help people remain in the community in accessible housing. That's what I have to say.
Thank you for those
Thank you.
those words. Do I have further public comment? With no further public comment, we will close that section of the agenda, and we will move on to the consent agenda. I will start by asking Billy, do you have anything you're wanting to pull off of the consent agenda?
I would like to pull item G.
Lane?
Nothing to pull, but I have a quick announcement, if I can. March 2nd, the Concho Bass Club, along with Texas Parks and Wildlife, Texas Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, and Ducks Unlimited will be hosting a Twin Buttes cleanup. They will meet at 10 a.m. and it's till 1 p.m. Meetings at the north and south pool parking lots. And what this will be doing is getting volunteers to help clean up the reservoir of trash and debris. And I believe Goodfellow Air Force, Kayak, Divas and Dudes, and ASU will have some volunteers out there. So just looking for some more volunteers if you'd like to help.
Lucy, would you like to pull anything from consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am.
M? Gary?
H.
Tom? Tommy?
No, ma'am.
With that, I'm going to pull item I. So with that, we are going to pull items G, M, H, and I from the consent agenda. So do I have a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda?
So moved, Mayor.
So seconded by Lane, motion made by Billy. Any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving the consent agenda without items G, M, H, or I, say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, consent agenda approved 7-0. We will start with item G. Item G is consider awarding FD-01-19 Vehicle Exhaust Removal System to Clean Air Concepts, Cincinnati, Ohio, in the amount of $286,703, and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents. This system is funded $81,665 by the city, with remaining funds provided by a 2019 budgeted federal grant. Brian?
Here to answer Councilman DeWitt's question.
Well, good morning, Chief Dunn, and thank you so much. And I know we had quite a bit of discussion about this yesterday, but would you just remind me, as well as citizens of the city, how this came about, when it came about, and what the plans are to do this, and how important it is to our first responders?
Okay, early last year, the fire department applied for an AFG grant for these diesel exhaust systems. And what these systems do is connect to our trucks and the diesel ambulances to get the diesel fumes out of the stations. Because what they have found out that these diesel fumes are causing several different types of cancers because of the exposure to the firefighters, because they're staying in the engine bays, and they're absorbing it through their skin because it's getting on their bunker gear and all the things that we use there. So we applied for that grant. They approved us for the grant. We brought the grant for y'all's acceptance there in the fall, and we've bid these things out. Now we're at the point to brought it to y'all to accept the bid. The grant is basically taking care of 5 of the stations. We budgeted for the new station, and that money was there. There's 2 stations that will not be done with this at the current time because they were built after their time frame, which I think anything built after 2008 by their deal, they will not cover with the grant. So Station 5 and 7 are the 2 stations that will not have these systems in a minute. Now, we will try to find other grants or a way to take care of that. We know we'll have Medicare supplemental money coming in the fall again that possibly, if we can't find anything, that we could maybe do those 2 stations with.
Thank you, Chief. That was all I had. If no one else has anything, I would make a motion that we approve this consent agenda item G.
Okay. Motion is made and second. Any public comment on item G? No public comment. We will take a vote. All in favor of passing item G, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item H, consider approving a memorandum of understanding with AEP Texas North Division for Energy Consulting Services, SCORE City Smart Program, at no cost to the city, and authorizing the city manager to execute all related documents.
Morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
Ron
How are
Lewis,
you?
Council. Had someone had a question?
Reedy.
Yes.
Just what I wanted you to do, Ron, is just let the citizens know how this benefits both the city and the taxpayers. Sometimes people don't read the background information, and I think this is important to let them know that we are out there looking after their tax dollars, and this is just one way we do that. So just a brief explanation.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. We participated in this program starting in 2007. AEP and the Clear Result is a consulting firm that's hired by AEP at no charge to the city or school districts as well to help in your planning process in either renovations or in new construction. So our first project was back in 2007, and I'm trying to remember, it's on the list of the background, if it didn't get cut off in the process. There were some small projects starting out, and then we got into, of course, City Hall and community development renovations. And this last year, 2 projects were done at the Coliseum lighting. Tom, you know about that. And then also the retrofit lighting of all the City Hall annex, the newly purchased building. Those were about $17,000 you saw in your background between the 2 projects. And those are incentives paid from AEP to us directly. So what we've done with those, usually we pull those back into the city, and we have managed to use those to incent other projects for other buildings. Several years ago, we did the lighting in the gyms at the rec centers, the 2 rec centers at the time, Southside and Carl Ray. So we had the money to put those projects in place, and then again, yield benefits of incentives. And you see in the background that we have over $57,000 received in incentives over the last 12 years or so. We didn't participate every year because we didn't have projects that were eligible for that, or either we didn't have the money to do those projects. And so it's been a good program for us. It costs us nothing. We only get to take money, which is always a good thing for the city. And usually we're the ones having to give it. And we always keep looking. We met with them just a few weeks ago. The group came in, and we talked about upcoming projects. So as we do see new buildings coming online, the new fire station will come online this year. Those will be projects that we'll look at to see if they were eligible for funding. They help us initially with researching some better lighting, roofing, and air conditioning components, more energy efficient. And if our engineers usually are ahead of the game on that, so there's not much conversation. We're probably getting, our designs are getting to the standard they need to be, and we just get to benefit from having them confirm that and pay us.
How many dollars in savings do you think we've received?
Well, it's almost $1 million over the last several years, so that's a significant amount of money, and it doesn't seem to be, but when you pay the electric bills like we do for just a couple of our buildings, then we know that that does save us a lot of money over time. And a lot of that is the energy efficient roofing, more energy efficient air conditioning, but more recently the LED lighting everybody knows about, and I know Councilman Carter brought that up several years ago. And back when we did City Hall and the community development buildings, those were not the leading edge design at the time. They weren't real proven, and they weren't really affordable. Now, since then, 2011, 12, those have become the market standard, you know. So we are retrofitting in our buildings as we can, like they did in those two projects this last year. So it's nice for us. It's just easy to do and usually relatively inexpensive.
Great. I think that's what I wanted to hear. I want the citizens to understand that this partnership that we've got really benefits not only the citizens, but what we're doing in City Hall. So move to approve as presented.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any public comment or questions? Steve, you seem to have one.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. He brought up that that this will save the city money, and he said that he pays the bills, the electric bills for the city. My question is, how much? What is the average cost of electric bill to the city?
We don't pay all electric bills. Each department pays their own. So we're just responsible for City Hall and the Community Development Building, and I can't tell you that number off the top of my head.
Ron, would it be safe to say that the payout on this, just on the Coliseum alone, is less than 2 years for the total switch?
I remember them doing the calculation, but
was.
I can't recall. Okay, so you know more than I do about that, because I know Kyle was involved with that project with
Right.
you, so.
The conversion alone pays
Yeah.
for itself in less than 2 years. Why would we not do that?
So that gives us additional savings, so. And I can get those numbers on our utility bills. That's easy. Actually, that's paid a different way, and then we just get billed that, so we'd have to get that number for you if you'd like it.
Thank you. Steve?
You don't have an approximation on an average, some ballpark?
Well, he probably won't, because he wouldn't have added up every building
Sure,
in the
but he's been
system,
paying them
but
for
we
years.
certain, excuse me?
He's been paying them for years.
He has not paid them for years. The individual departments have, and I'm sure we haven't totaled it up. But should you like us to do that, the next meeting, we would be glad to total up all the
That'd be
electrical bills
wonderful.
that we pay in
Thank
the
you.
city and present that number. Thank you. Any further public comment? No further public comment? We will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We will move on to item I. Consider approving tax increment reinvestment zone tiers incentive funding for one private project in the North Tiers area for the property located at 2020 North Bryant, totaling $75,000, and 6 private projects in the South Tiers area for the properties located at 6 East Concho, 8 East Concho, 101 South Chadburn, 123 North Chadburn, 200 South Magdalen, and 305 West Tuwig, totaling $254,000. John, to start with, would you just explain to people what the tax increment refinance zone is? And do you have in the backup documents pictures of those projects?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. We do have in your background information pictures of what's proposed. I don't believe we provided them to Anthony for
Okay.
showing on the screens, but that was provided in your background. The tax increment reinvestment zone is basically an area in which the taxes above the base year, which I believe was 2008, any tax increase value, those additional taxes go into a separate fund to fund projects within the zone. And so basically each year, a portion of the taxes on those properties, it's not increased taxes for those properties, it's the taxes they would already pay. A portion of those go into this fund that can go back into street projects like the Chadburn Street project and also private incentives. And that's what we're talking about today is those private incentives. We have a process where property owners within the tiers can apply for an incentive grant to improve the facade of a downtown historic building, for example, or many other things, improving those properties. The maximum grant is $75,000. They are required to put up a match, so the property owner has to put in money for the project as well. The Tiers Board goes through a process where we open applications, we get applications from property owners, they review those and make a recommendation. That's what's before you today is the recommendation from the Tiers Board on those incentive grants.
Okay, thank you. With that, do I have any other questions for John from council? May I have a motion for approval?
Moved.
Billy moves it. Who seconds it?
Second.
And Lucy seconds it. Do we have any public comment? With no public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving item I, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? With none opposed, motion passes 7-0. We will move on to item M. Consider approving a memorandum of understanding between the City of San Angelo and the San Angelo Police Officers Association for the completion of the Police Memorial Statue Project. Welcome. Nice.
morning.
Good morning.
I'm David Howard.
Go ahead.
Chief Howard, you have here that you wanted us to release the funds of $4,065 that was donated by the citizens of San Angelo to finish up the memorial. Can you tell me what y'all are gonna do to finish this up? I mean, I know we've seen it and everything, but I just wanted to know what else y'all were gonna do.
The funds will allow us to complete a base for the statue, a nice base. Right now, it doesn't have one.
Okay, so it's just the base that y'all are.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted the citizens to be aware of what they were doing.
Thank you.
With that, do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second? Second. There's a motion and a second to approve item M. Is there any public comment on item M? With no public comment, we'll take a vote. All of those in favor say aye.
Aye.
With none opposed, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, Ruben, would you come back up here, please?
I messed up my computer. Hit the wrong button.
Oops, meeting's over.
It's actually done. She messed up. All right, we will move into the regular agenda. Item 7A, report from the Convention and Visitors Bureau, CVB, and Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Council, presentations made by CVB Director Diana Bays and Chamber Vice President for Economic Development, Michael Looney. Diana, you're up first.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Pardon my voice. I'm getting over everything everybody else has had at the office, so glad that's almost over. I'm doing wrong. There it is. As you all know, and we always like to remind you, the mission of the Convention and Visitors Bureau is to enhance the quality of life for the citizens of San Angelo through tourism and marketing and promotion. And then our 5 goals for 2018 were to grow hotel occupancy by 5%, to communicate the need for wayfinding and connectivity, to for brand awareness to tell the story of San Angelo and to expand the tourism base through a broader understanding, appreciation of the economic impact of the tourism industry, and to encourage tourism product development and strategies to address future growth. So these are your results, and I'm going to go ahead and preface this. I sent this last week to Anthony while I was on medication, and I think there are some of these things that are incorrect. So
Are they inflated
they're-
numbers?
No, they're pretty good. They're pretty close, but I do need to let you know that at the very end, I'll explain it. So anyway, these numbers are correct. The hotel occupancy increased from 49.7% to 60.65%, which our goal was 5%, so we were very pleased with almost an 11% increase. Hotel tax collections from January to December were 2.3 million, I believe, and at the end of 2017, that number was around 1.8 million, so we saw a nice increase there. I won't say that was all Convention and Visitors Bureau by any means, but we do like to think that we played a good role in that. We booked or provided services to 78 conventions, meetings, sporting events, weddings, or motor coach tours. And we provided 4,500 welcome bags to 51 groups throughout the year. Just to give you an idea of what our marketing looked like, we try to focus on our niche markets from sports, and you'll see a lot of that, the bus tour operators, meeting planner guides, and even going to trade shows like Southwest Showcase, which is a meeting planner show in Austin. We did sales blitzes. We even attended oil conventions to represent our community there. Also numerous calls in metro cities and then calls to Midland in the oil and gas industry. Of course, our leisure and consumer market is probably one of our biggest markets. We always support the Texas State Travel Guide, which is a publication of the Governor's Office and Texas Department of Transportation. True West Magazine, Authentic Texas, Texas Town and City, Parks and Wildlife, which was a new program for us this past year because we do believe that the state park is a gem for us. In talking to Jim Cisneros at the state park, who is their park director and who's done a fabulous job in partnering with people in the city and different organizations, I believe he said he got a 16% increase in park visits last year. So we like to think that some of that marketing helped with those efforts. See Texas First, again, print is not dead. This is an insert that goes into newspaper subscribers, newspapers, so they get a piece that's done by the Governor's Office, Texas Highways, and of course Where to Retire. And then just a few more that you see here, Travel Host West Texas, Woman's Day, Good Housekeeping Red Book. We did some sponsorships with the Craft Beer Experience, trying to help them with a little bit of seed money to get that event started. And of course, we supported this year and last year the San Angelo Stock Show and Rodeo in the wine tent. We had our little plastic wine cups all over, and we like to think that everybody enjoyed them, and we're on our discoversanangelo.com site often. Shop Across Texas was yet another area that we decided to promote this year, and 7 local stores were awarded Best of Stores through Shop Across Texas, and in fact, Letty's was named Best of the Best, so we're very proud of the partnerships we did with our local community. Tour Texas, and then, of course, Living Magazine. As far as our social media, we're doing a lot of things differently than we did 20 years ago when I started in this industry. Our website, of course, is very important, 258,000 page views, but we are now always on social media on a constant basis with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and you can see that the numbers are continuing to increase there. We're very proud of what we're doing with that. Through those marketing efforts, specifically the print publications and online publications, we captured 30,740 leads from print and online advertising. Those leads include emails, so we are able to then follow up with e-newsletters to those folks who are requesting more information about San Angelo. So we do that on a monthly basis with them, and we were in 48 print publications. These numbers are accurate too. Hotel occupancy comparison, only thing missing is it should say December instead of November, so my apologies. The hotel occupancy in the end of, or average for 2017 was 56.8%, and the year of 2018, it was 66.4%. So you see that 10% increase. And this number actually is incorrect. The average daily rate in 2017 was 73.26, not 78. And the average daily rate in 2018 was 78.76, and that's based on 33 properties with 2,800 rooms from the Smith Travel Report. Some of the things we did with community outreach this year, I was a co-presenter at the Texas Historical Commission Real Places 2018 conference. I was on the Texas Association of Convention and Visitors Bureau board for a year. I will also add that I was just recently added to the Texas Travel Industry Association board. There are only 3 communities in West Texas that are represented: El Paso, Lubbock, and San Angelo. And so everybody else is on 35 and East. So we're thrilled to be a part of that. Of course, we attend Unity Dinner every year, and we will be going this year. We have several people on the dais who will be joining us this year, along with our representative and folks from the senator's office. And so we're very proud of that. We have around 800 people who will be in attendance. Those are the travel and tourism industry representatives. It's a $70 billion industry for the state of Texas. And then we will do the Converge on the Capitol, where we have our messaging that we will deliver on Thursday at the Capitol with 2,000 of our travel and tourism industry friends and family. And so we want to make sure that the legislators understand that the million jobs that are affected and the thousands of small businesses that are affected in the travel and tourism industry are important to our state and to San Angelo. We do Goodfellow tours on a monthly and bi-monthly basis. Texas Friendly Hospitality Training, this past year we did that quarterly, and we had 97 people participate in that program. A number of those came from Goodfellow, and they continue to be very supportive of our efforts there. We, of course, every May host the National Travel and Tourism Week, and we do our tourism luncheon. Last year was our Did You Know campaign, and we may continue that campaign. Who knows what that will look like, but we think it'll be very exciting and hope people will join us then. We did some presentations to local organizations as well. And then, of course, we hosted with the Chamber Goodfellow Appreciation Day. I think I hit the wrong button. Now, this should say efforts, not upcoming efforts. So we're seeking the Texas Music Friendly designation from the Texas Music Office. As you know, we did a workshop in January, and we are going to continue to do research on what is the best fit for our city. We participated in programs with the Office of the Governor and Travel and Tourism Division. We are continuing those efforts. Susanna just returned from a great trip in Mexico, along with other travel industry experts, and she did media and sales blitzes there. She is getting ready on Friday to head to Canada, so we're really hitting the North American market. I was in New York City 2 weeks ago with the governor's office and their agency, and we were speaking to numerous bloggers, travel writers, and publications about what there is to see and do in San Angelo. And I will tell you, nobody knew anything about San Angelo. And so we were thrilled to be able to deliver that message, and we will continue to work with folks from the Food Network to Southern Living to MSN to NBC to ABC, CBS, all of those folks. We're going to be putting San Angelo on the market, on the map, and we're excited about that.
You know, last week we were on Good Morning America with the highest temperature in the United States at 80 degrees.
There you go. We'll take it. Take it every day. Yeah, exactly. Oh, I think I probably did say that to somebody. It's very cold there. When we were in 2018, we did seek the top 10 Western town designation from True West. We announced that in January we did receive that, so that was part of our efforts. And then we were looking at a FAM tour for independent filmmakers. And next month, I will announce a great thing that's going to be happening here in San Angelo in 2020. So I'm just going to give you a teaser there. Not going to tell you what it is. Sorry, guys. Working with some folks out of Austin. So we've got some really great things that are going to be happening. We did host bloggers and their families in July, and I'm happy to report that we had over 5 million impressions from that blog visit. Those folks are continuing to put our message out. And one of the bloggers, who is a Disney blogger, came back in December with her kids. And one of the things, she did the top 25 Instagrammable locations in San Angelo. And one of the places she went was to the state park. And her boys were with her, and they got to be up close and personal with the bison and the longhorns. And she said, hands down, one of the best activities her family experienced last year in 2018. And they went to Disney World and Disneyland and all of those places. So sometimes authenticity is the best way
So
to
the
promote.
buffalo were a good hit?
They
Is that
were a
what they're
huge
saying?
hit, huge hit. And then, of course, we're going to further promote our niche markets to increase overnight stays. Just to give you accountability, to let you know how we are accountable, because we are fully funded by hotel tax dollars.
You want to talk about hotel tax dollars? In the sense of why you say that?
Okay. Because our goal is to put heads in beds. And if we are not filling our hotel rooms, we don't get funded. And so the more people spend and the more visitors spend in our community, the better. In 2016, the visitor spend, if not for visitor spending, would have been $379 per household in taxes every year. In the end of 2017, that number went up $20. So if not for visitor spending, every household in San Angelo would spend another $399 in taxes. And so it's very important. The more money they spend, the more time they are here, the better their experience is, the longer they stay, the more time they're spending at our attractions, our restaurants, our accommodations, our retail locations. That is important to us, and that's so important to the citizens of San Angelo. So we hope that you understand that you should support this organization and support what our efforts are, and make every experience with whoever the visitor is that you touch a Texas-friendly experience, so they want to come back over and
So
over
most of your efforts, or a large part of your efforts, is with the intent of getting heads in beds.
Heads and beds.
Correct.
That is correct, Mayor. And I wanted to do one little shout out to one of our employees. Amy Roberts has been very vested in the Desk and Derrick groups in Midland. And last year, she was named Rookie of the Year by Desk and Derrick, so we're very proud of her. I don't know that she's in the room. She had to get some card work done this morning. But she has done a phenomenal job. Very fortunate to have such a great staff. Susanna Aguirre does our leisure sales, and she is a go-getter, always after new ideas and developing tours and itineraries that will get that market out there. And then, of course, Linda Burdell manages the volunteers. The Visitor Center is the #1 attraction in San Angelo, according to TripAdvisor, with a 4.5 rating. And it wasn't even intended for that, but we have volunteers who have made the experience so special that visitors are taking the time to write reviews and talk about what a great place we have to not only work, but for visitors to come and get information.
Certainly that location on the river and how beautiful that location is draws a lot of
It
people
doesn't
in.
hurt. It doesn't hurt. That is all I have for you. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Would you go back to the list of all of the hits that you've had off of, right? You almost had it there. Compared to 3 years ago, what would that look like?
Wow. I can tell you our Instagram followers in April 2017, when I started, we had 200. And the Twitter account has not increased as much. The Facebook group, I know we were around 9,000 when I started in 2017 in April. Pinterest was really nothing. We're still continuing to increase that and have some new ways in talking to some media folks. We didn't have a YouTube channel. So that is all new, all of those, and we're continuing to, and we're going to be adding some videos this year as well. But our discoversanangelo.com page, of course, we didn't really have any tracking that was being taken place when it was Visit San Angelo. Not enough to showcase where we are, but we're really thrilled with what those stats look like and being able to get that message out.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Billy, please.
Good morning, Diane.
Good
That's
morning.
certainly an awesome report, so thank you very much. I know a couple of weeks ago, we had a site visit from the state NAACP, and I don't know, has a decision been made?
A decision has been made, and they will be here in October for the annual conference. It is their statewide conference. They have never been in San Angelo. That is to the great efforts of Susanna Aguirre. She did a great job in showcasing them. I was out of town. I was in New York when they came, and Bruce Partain, our president and CEO, also helped with that. And I know there were a number of council people who attended that luncheon, but Shirley Spears is the president of the local NAACP chapter, and Garland Freeze, the past president, helped get us that bid in the first place. And so we're really excited to have them come. I believe it's October. I can't remember the exact date in October, but they will be joining us for the first time, Texas State Conference. So that's a great thing for us.
That is great, because we have tried to get that conference here before, and nobody wants to come to West Texas. So you, your staff, everyone did everything just right, because we were not the first site that they selected, but something
correct.
happened with the other site, and they decided to come check San Angelo out. And I think
We
they
kind
were-
of pounced on it once we heard that.
Yeah, they were very suitably impressed. So, you know, it's an exciting time, because it will help us to get heads in beds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Billy.
Would you go back to the screen that shows how many hotel beds we have?
Oh, there it is.
So if you take a look at that, the total of 2,815 rooms, one of the key things today is if you look at the occupancy of that at 66%, and you go back to 4 years ago when we didn't have the 6 new hotels,
Correct.
we would have been 110, 115% booked.
Right. Well, and something
So we've grown into the rooms.
correct. And what I would say to you, the average in the state is 60%. And so we are there with the numbers. The other thing to think about, 2,800 rooms, if you're at, even at 50%, that's 1,400 rooms per night times 365. So if you think
Great.
about how many people are coming, that's on single and double occupancy. Usually we multiply it, use a 2.5 multiplier. But you're going to have 500,000 people coming to our community every year staying in hotels at a minimum of 500,000. So it's a lot of people coming, no matter what they're coming, whether they're for business or they're coming or leisure, they're coming for business, sports, graduations, whatever it may be. They're visitor first. It starts with a visit, and if that first experience is a great experience for them, people like Michael Looney, who's going to be joining us here in a moment, have businesses that want to come here, but we have to make sure that first experience is a great one.
Thank you. And we want to blame Tom Thompson for the past 2 weeks where the hotel rates went up to $289 a night.
Thank you, sir.
Team, go team.
Good.
It's a last minute check-in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diane. Now, let's see you follow up to that.
Well, we think economic development is just as fun as all of the really neat, fun events and things like that Diane Bays and her awesome crew work on every day. So I'm going to lead right into it. The Chamber of Commerce proudly supports economic development. We have a department that is me and one other person, and we are the Economic Development Department. My name is Michael Looney. I'm the Vice President of Economic Development for the San Angelo Chamber of Commerce. And our job is to recruit new companies, industry to San Angelo, Texas, and the immediate surrounding area. We work with existing companies. We work with brand new companies. We work with companies that we've never even heard of before that we've been introduced to through all of our different efforts. To lead into a couple of the 2018 successes, this is fourth quarter 2018, SMC Global Corporation. This is a chemical company based out of New York, and they make a lot of different types of chemicals for many different types of industries. They work in the oil field industry as well, and that is why we recruited them last year. And in 2018, they had their big splash and made a big impact on the market by leasing 2 properties, one for manufacturing and one for distribution. We estimated a total of a $7 million annual impact direct in the form of salaries and taxes and and the amount of real estate that they're capturing. They're right now working on another 2 pieces of real estate, 40,000 square feet plus, for even more expansion. And what Diane said is so right on the money, because there are so many different options in West Texas. You have all this land east of or west of I-35. And when we are introduced to a company and we source a company that we know would be a good fit for our market, we go after them. And we do it as a community effort. And it's really awesome because there are several of you on this panel and this council that have worked directly with us at different times to help us recruit these companies, because really, at the end of the day, the companies really want to know, are you going to support us? Do you have the workforce that we need? And a lot of these companies don't have massive workforces. A lot of these transactions that we read about in the paper of 500 jobs created, there's so much automation with these companies that we're working with, and so much of it is computerized and so automated. 25 people can do the job that would have been done by 75 people maybe 5 years ago. And so that really serves us well. And we get great reports from companies like SMC Global Corporation that it's the community effort that makes the difference. I should add that SMC Global, there were no incentives or direct assistance that was provided. There were no tax dollars used. These are relationships that we've worked very diligently to build. And these companies are coming here for the right reasons. And that's the way we look at it, is that incentives dollars, half-cent sales tax dollars are very important. And it is very important to keep that gunpowder dry in case you need it, because sometimes you might. But it's not just, money in exchange, assistance in exchange for jobs. I mean, sometimes, let's say, for example, a company needs a water line or special electricity hooked up. Certainly those half-cent sales tax dollars can be used to good effect to do something that's really material, that's going to affect the facility. In this case, though, we were very fortunate in that this company told us many times that they're here for all the right reasons and they wanted access to the West Texas market, and they're very, very pleased with San Angelo. But it's not just industry and manufacturing. We also look for other opportunities within the different types of industries that are out there. And one of them that we're really proud of that we worked on for over a year is Eon Energy. This is a company that is developing a solar power plant out in the county, not very far from the city limits. In fact, you can see the top of the Cactus Hotel from their property. That is a $130 million investment, and this is one of 3 that we're currently working on. This is it's a big company out of Essen, Germany, and the county did work with them on some incentives, which we assisted with. This would be with the school district, Grape Creek, and with the county, in exchange for some assistance so that they could construct this massive plant that is going to provide electrons from this area into eastern Texas. And it's only 2 jobs, but what's really nice about this is that the tax yield to the county and to the school district is going to support them greatly. So when you have an environment like in West Texas, where we're west of I-35, where 13% of the population of Texas is west of I-35, and so we don't have this massive surplus of employees, but this is a great way to generate revenue and to expand a growing industry in our region. So we have hydrocarbon, we have wind, and now we have solar. And so we're really, really happy with how that's come along. U.S. Well Services, this is a company that's based in Houston, but they have a major presence in western Pennsylvania, punching what's called the Marcellus Shale Play. We started working with them in 2018 to entice them to come to San Angelo. They were looking for a regional facility, and we were very successful, and we were very pleased to have encouraged them to move here. Again, this was a transaction that they did not request nor require any kind of half-cent sales tax incentives. They wanted to know that we had the proper employee base that they needed, and that they came in and with 46 employees, and that is increasing greatly, over 100 now, which we learned in December, another 100. What was really neat about this is this was a transaction where I like to say that the school district made the deal. And we had put so much effort into working with this company from a facility standpoint. We looked at everything, road weight limits, because of the equipment they bring in. This is massive pumping equipment. And at the last minute, we were told that there was a little bit of concern about the schools, because the company was coming in from Pennsylvania and they knew nothing about West Texas at all. And so
They think we didn't have schools?
well,
Just curious.
they were concerned because of the stories they heard from other cities in West Texas, where you have these really small rural communities, or you have Midland, Odessa, where the schools are just jam-packed with people, and they were really concerned about that. And so Dr. Detloff and I kind of made that final run of the transaction over the finish line, because he made them feel very confident in our school system that we're so well versed in bringing in students from around the world because of Goodfellow Air Force Base and because of our oil companies that come in from all around the nation, that this company was a little concerned that would their students' cultural, academic, and psychological needs be understood. And he said, absolutely they will. We have kids coming in from all over the world through Goodfellow, and that made a big impression on this company. And so again, that's about a $22 million impact to our immediate economy. Eon is $130 million. SMC is $7 million. These are estimates, because you remember, these companies have not taken any half-cent sales tax dollars. And so we are going by their grace on what the estimates of their yields are. And we run those yields with a software program. Shannon Scott with CoCDC and I work on those together. So we have a pretty good estimation of what those impacts are to our community. And these are annualized. These are not a 3-year horizon or a 5-year horizon. These are per year. And so what we'll do is we'll come back at you probably the next council meeting and say, here's where we are now, presently. And that would be really, really awesome to see how they're growing. Prospect update. As you know, we're always out there in the field using our relationship, our SARMA, the San Angelo Regional Manufacturers Alliance, which a lot of you have heard me talk about. I would like to add that we were a proud sponsor of the rodeo, if you saw our ad in the brochure. And we did sponsor the ag and mechanical competition that was conducted during the rodeo as well. Fourth quarter 2018, Project C2-1219. This is a 60,000 square foot manufacturing facility, very heavily automated, that we are working on. This is a company that's based out of state that we are working on trying to get them a little bit more property information, some employee information, and then a tour will happen sometime in this first quarter. Project Reno, this is a company that would be approximately a 15-employee company. This is an engine company. We can't say a whole lot about it, but they have toured San Angelo twice very successfully. Some of you were aware of that and were involved with that. And that is something that, again, this is really the power of the San Angelo Regional Manufacturers Alliance program, and that's why we're so excited about it. We've, as I said before, created kind of this army of invested companies that love San Angelo. This is their home. This is their region. They want to see this economy grow. And what we've done is we've essentially asked these 100-plus companies, these manufacturers, fabricators, and energy service companies, help us understand what are the suppliers you work with, what are the raw materials suppliers that you work with, what are the companies that would most complement and not cannibalize our existing industry, because we don't want to recruit a company that's going to eat somebody else. We want them to work together. And so Reno is a project that came out of another fabrication company. They make engines, and this is a very long-standing relationship that they had with this West Coast-based company. You can probably guess what state they're in. I'll let you guess. Okay. Anyway, this is the success of that, and we feel very. I thought that was kind of clever. Project ICET. It says ICE-T, but it's Project ICET. This is another engine manufacturing company that would be an offshoot of Project Reno. And this is it's a completely separate company. It says determining corporate tour. That corporate tour happened 2 weeks ago. But you can see we're ahead of the curve on that. So again, more companies on the way that we're talking to. We feel really confident that 2 of those companies that we just showed you on that slide are going to land. Project PAC is a company that we've been working with actually since 2016. So that goes to show you that when we get our claws on a deal, we really hang on to it. This is a company that's a steel company. We've been talking to them. We've had tours. The mayor and I went and visited them last May in Houston. They have a division there, and we're still continuing that discussion. They're right now going through a suspected merger, and so we've been told just hang tight. We're working on it. This would be, if successful, a 100,000 square foot facility, 100 to 140 employees. Recurrent Energy, this is one of the other solar power plants that we are working with. They were a big sponsor of Christmas at Fort Concho, incidentally, so it's nice to see these companies that put forth their effort into the community. This is a 200 megawatt, $120 million development. Again, it would provide a good, strong tax yield to Tom Green County and the independent school district that is in their area. Very low impact on land and road structure. And this is really the nice thing about these plants is that they're very low profile because they're near the ground. They're throwing off a good tax yield. They're helping the school system, school district. Once they're built, and they are run off-site. That you may have one person to make sure that the trees don't grow up underneath the panels, and that's about it. So when we encourage our students to get involved with robotics competitions, which we do out in this area through our STAR program and our STEM research program, that's what they're learning how to build are these things. These are big robots is what they are.
These are the things that really help us add to our property tax base.
It really
which is one
does,
of the
because you think about
key-
it, these two 4,000 plus acre properties are just pasture land. And there's really not a whole lot of yield that comes out of them. I mean, the real thing you want to look at is, well, what could be done? I mean, is a neighborhood going to be built there? And in these cases, the answer was, well, no, not anywhere in the near future. Maybe in 50 years, but in 50 years, this plant will probably have outlived its useful life. And there's virtually no impact to the land. It's truly clean energy. So yes, so while this land is sitting there, it's going to be generating electrons that are going to be bought by companies and municipalities in the eastern part of the states, where almost all of it's going. And a lot of people have asked, why is there this sudden resurgence of solar? There's really two basic reasons. One is that we have good land area near the substations that run the electrons from Western Texas to Eastern Texas, and that's a really big thing. We have a big junction point here. The second thing is we've been told, well, the sun is obvious. Yes, Mayor Gunter, we do have a lot of sun. And ironically, the past couple times we've had these companies in town to tour the properties, it was overcast, which we sort of said, it's really sunny here.
Murphy's Law.
But the other thing is we've been told, and this is what's great, and I know Mayor Gunter has met with people from Eon and from Recurrent, and they like the fact that we're friendly and we're helpful. And when Councilwoman Gonzalez came to one of our meetings with Recurrent a couple of weeks ago, we put our money where our mouth is and we go for it. And we love these companies, and they really appreciate the fact that we're so helpful. And it makes a big difference. And that's why that's why I tell people, everyone in this community, you're all economic developers, every one of you, and it makes a huge impact. Project 905, another 30,000 square foot fabrication facility. We're waiting to get them down. This is a company based out of Colorado. Had good conversations with them. We'll tell more about that next time. Let's see. For those who aren't aware, most of you are, but some of the folks watching on TV or in the audience don't know that we work really, really closely with COCDC. That's the City of San Angelo Development Corporation. That's the economic development branch of the city. We are, of course, Chamber of Commerce. We work very, very closely. We're interlocked on almost all projects, and we have a great partnership. One of the things that we really stand for is not just recruiting new companies, but supporting those companies that we already have here. We want to show them that we care very deeply about them, and we want to see them healthy. And we want to understand what are the things that they need, that heavy industry needs in our area to stay healthy. And so we work with over 100 companies that make up our database of SARMA companies. These are manufacturers, fabricators, energy service companies. We do weekly boots-on-the-ground visits. So we go out to every company as much as we can, as many as we can during the week, and pay personal visits to them. We're also in the process of working on national legacy companies. These are our companies like Blue Cross, Ethicon, Cytel, Goodyear, and these are companies that haven't had visits from San Angelo economic development and council members for many, many, many years. And so you're going to be hearing more about that in the near future, where we think it's really important to get up there, go to Akron, Ohio, and go up to New Jersey to see Ethicon, and just interface with them and talk to them and tell them how proud we are to have them here and understand what it is that we can do to make that experience better and grow those companies. And we've been informed by those companies that have presences here, those big national legacy companies, that would be really, really welcome. We've been told there's no fear, there's no scuttlebutt, hey, we're thinking about doing something different somewhere else, but it sure makes a big impression when you can sit down with the vice president of a Goodyear or Cytel and say, we really appreciate you being in our community, we want you here, and those go a long way. This is some pictures of our industrial outreach missions that we go on each week. So you can see we've got members of the Chamber and Costa DC, Wendland Tank, Karen Transport, that's a company up on Arden Road that took the old Globe Energy facility. West Texas Industrial Engines, Dragon Industries, they got their signage up. It looks really good and they're doing really well. One of the things that these outreach missions really help us understand is getting a really good tour of the facilities, putting eyes on their projects and understanding how they're really doing and how this dynamic economy that we're all trying to work within is affecting them. The good news is that it's affecting them well. And one of the biggest issues that we hear is workforce. And I know that's not a really big surprise, but that is why with the Chamber and with Costa DC, we work really, really closely with the Workforce Board. That's a big partner of ours. And then also through our San Angelo Regional Manufacturers Alliance program, we work with existing companies to understand what can be done to uptrain people that they already have or to attract new talent from other parts of the state. And again, here is our logo, the SARMA program. It, of course, supports industry and the energy sector in San Angelo. We work with Costa DC. We work really closely with Tom Green County and with our city's planning and permitting office. The development department is outstanding, and I want to throw out kudos to them. They have been awesome partners. Whenever there's a hiccup, whenever there's an issue, which is going to happen, that's just the way business is, they always jump on it. For example, with SMC Global, when we did their first 2 facilities, that was supposed to take 4 months. That was how long it took Kansas City for that company to deploy a new building in Kansas City. This was 2 in San Angelo. We did a 4-month project in 7 weeks. And that was in large part because of our partners and our friends at John James's crew out there at the permitting and planning department. And we worked on it together. And we were so proud of that. And that made a huge difference. And that was the company that said, we just want your help. We just want to get these permits pushed through as quickly as possible and done right. And both facilities are awesome to go look at. They're amazing what they did with these 2 older facilities that really needed a lot of help. So we're really, really pleased with how that's turned out. We engage in business-to-business recruiting. What we do with our SARMA members is we deploy them, we deputize them, help understand how can we work with companies that they work with that we may never even know exist, that we want to build relationships with. And that's what they do, and that's been really, really helpful to do. SARMA companies have helped recruit SMC Global, U.S. Well Services, Dragon Industries, Eon Energy, and Recurrent Energy. When we're on the final yard line of trying to get these companies to make a commitment, we put them directly in front of SARMA members, usually well before that too, so that industry can speak to industry, and that makes a big difference. And then TSTC Day, in our efforts to recruit, to help companies that are
Tell
here.
people what TSTC stands
TSTC is Texas State Technical College. They have their main college is in Waco. It's a really, really large vocational college. They have a brand new division up in Abilene. It's a 56,000 square foot facility that's very expandable. It's brand new. It's less than a year old. And what we do is we take as many SARMA companies as we can sign up, usually on a quarterly basis, and we'll go to TSTC together at the invitation of Rick Denbo, who's the provost, and his mission is to help get his students employed in the San Angelo area or wherever they may be needed. And so what we do is we'll go up with SARMA members to TSTC, we'll spend the day with them, and we will meet with students that are towards the end part of their education and basically set up impromptu interviews and start handing out brochures on what job availabilities there are in San Angelo. So we're actually just grabbing our SARMA members, going up to TSTC and telling these youngsters, we've got the jobs that you want and we're ready to talk right now. And they're cutting deals in the hallway, and it is so awesome to see. It's a grassroots way to do it, but it works. And we're gonna be doing a lot more of those. Hold on, wait. Oh yeah, TMAC, Texas Manufacturers Assistance Center. We're really excited to announce that the Chamber, a couple of weeks ago, the Chamber signed documentation with the Texas Manufacturers Assistance Center. This is a partially federally funded program that helps industry, heavy industry, excel to the next level through education and through sourcing of resources that they might need to grow. TMAC has a presence in San Antonio. That's where their headquarters is. at the Southwest Research Institute, which is a massive 1,200-acre institution where they test equipment. A lot of military testing goes on down there and industrial testing. TMAC is a small division of that operation. They have spent time in San Angelo. We've had 3 meetings with them, and we signed documentation to begin projects where we will do actual courses that are taught to companies around the world on lean manufacturing practices and different kinds of manufacturing enhancement practices. And there's in your packet, you'll see the actual, I put the course curriculum in there as well, so you can take a look at that. And we're going to be doing more courses in 2019. And these are funded by TMAC. These are completely, this does not cost our companies anything to host. All we have to do is set up the meeting and promote it and get the students ready and get them in. This is our website. We have done a SARMA website that highlights who we are, what we do, and we put all of our different events and our newsletter on here. We also have a series of videos as well, which I've shown in the past. And if you go to sarma.us, that's www.sarma.us, you can tour the website and take a look at it and learn more about what we're doing. But that's a pretty good summary, I think, of what we're doing for the fourth quarter. If there's any other questions, we'd love to talk to you about it. I'm never at a lost words, so if you want to go out in the hallway and talk after the meeting, we sure can do that.
When
But we're
does
just
Pharma
really
start?
excited. Pharma start. Pharma is the agricultural version of SARMA. And what we did is we're actually in the process of working with our board on trying to figure out exactly when we're going to kick that off. The situation is that the SARMA, the San Angelo Regional Manufacturers Alliance, has been so popular and has become such a major platform of economic development for the chamber that it's pushed back our deadline on the Pharma, which is the agricultural version of the SARMA. We're wanting to do that sometime in the middle part of this year. We think that that's achievable to get it kicked off. But in order to just at least reach into the ag sector, that's why we got involved with the rodeo. So SARMA did sponsor part of the rodeo, and then also the part of the ag mechanical competition. And so we're reaching into that. It's $1 billion industry in our region. And yes, we do know that agricultural sector of our region is kind of taken for granted. And we really found that out by doing our research and by getting to know these companies. But the same thing with our industrial companies. You think our industrial companies here make up the very backbone of our economy. And oftentimes we drive by them and we see, yep, there's Cytel, but we really don't know much about what they do or what their needs are. They're growing, by the way.
Thank you.
So
Do
if
I
there's
have
any other
other
questions,
questions
I'd love
from
to answer
council?
them.
I did make a comment real quickly. The partnership that we have with the chamber is stronger than it's ever been, and I want to say thanks to Bruce and his staff, to Michael and what he's doing with SARMA and attracting these companies in there, and the partnerships that he's got with Costa DC and the other partnerships, and with Diane and what she's doing right now, attracting visitors in here and promoting San Angelo. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's making an awesome impact, and we're really pleased to be partners with all of you. It's so exciting.
Thank you. All right, we will now move into items. Hold on, let me get myself together here. We are going to go into item B of regular agenda, which is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance ordaining the city's participation in the Texas Enterprise Zone Program pursuant to the Texas Enterprise Zone Act, Chapter 2303, Texas Government Code, providing tax incentives, designating a liaison for communication with interested parties, and nominating Ethicon, Inc. to the Office of the Governor, Economic Development and Tourism, EDT, through the Economic Development Bank as an enterprise project. Presentation will be made by Bob Schneeman, and you're on, Bob.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, members of council, Mr. Valenzuela. Michael's a tough act to follow. But in keeping with one of the things that he said about taking care of our existing companies, that's what this item is about, and supporting one of our major local companies. This is a public hearing, and the council may remember that they heard this item on the 5th of February. We brought it back for another public hearing to satisfy some of the requirements of the state law. It's actually an administrative requirement of the governor's office. This was originally designated as an enterprise zone in August of 2012, and by state law, that expired after 5 years. If it's approved by the governor's office, the company becomes eligible for certain sales and use tax rebates from the state portion of the sales tax. The rebates are on a sliding scale based on an amount of capital investment by the company and the number of jobs created by the company. It's the governor's office's decision whether or not the company is chosen for the program. We are simply nominating them for participation in this program. I'll answer any questions.
Do I have any questions from council members? Then do I have a motion for approval in a second? Now we'll open up for public comment on this item as required by law. It's our second reading and our second meeting to allow for comments from the public. Do we have any today?
Ray Gonzalez, plant manager at Ethicon. Mayor, City Council, Mr. Valenzuela, just wanted to take a minute to say thank you. Appreciate past support for Ethicon. As you guys know, most people know, Ethicon has been part of San Angelo for 55 years this year. And I've been with Ethicon for 23, so I know what San Angelo means to Ethicon and what Ethicon means to San Angelo. And 55 years, the world has changed quite a bit, as we all know, and we are competing in a global environment. J&J, 125-year plus company, works every day to stay competitive, make sure we're providing the best products for our customers. And part of that is doing things that can help stay competitive. And this is just one of the things that we've done over the many years in partnership with the city back in 2012 to do that. I can report to you that Ethicon is going very strong. Over the last couple of years, we've added jobs, invested heavily in capital, won business from other parts of the network within J&J. So again, I just wanted to express my thanks on behalf of Ethicon and appreciate the partnership with the city.
Thank you very much.
Ray, before you leave, just one good comment, because I know this is your second go-around in San Angelo, so
Yes,
you
sir.
kind of like it here.
I do.
And I want to say that really appreciate the partnership that you guys have with the city. I know a number of you retired Ethicon people, because my wife is one of them. She goes to the retirees. So thank you for what you guys do for the city.
Thanks, Harry. Yeah, I know there's a couple of reps from Ethicon up here, so.
Hi, Ray.
Hi, Billy. How are you? So, great.
Thank
Any
you
other
very
questions?
much.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? If there's no further public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor of approving, say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? None opposed. Motion passes 7-0. We will now go into item C of the regular agenda, public hearing and first reading of an amendment to the City of San Angelo's Code of Ordinances, Chapter 5, Section 5.02.033, prohibited licenses, establishing an exception of variance procedure for on-premise sale of alcoholic beverages at a restaurant less than 300 feet from a school facility in the Central Business District. And John, you're on.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. As you said, this would be an amendment to the City Code of Ordinances, and the question before you is whether or not to allow a variance process for sales of alcohol within 300 feet of a school. Under today's ordinance, if you're within 300 feet of a school, you simply cannot get an alcohol beverage permit from the state. This would allow a variance process. It's established in state law. It authorizes cities to establish a variance process, but it doesn't require it. So to date, we have not included that in our ordinance, this variance process, but this proposal would add that variance process. When we originally looked at this, there was a property or potential restaurant owner looking at a property on North Chadbourne that fell too close to the Central Freshman campus. So that's what brought this discussion up in the first place. We originally looked at an outright exemption, so basically exempting anything within the Central Business District from that 300-foot separation requirement. But as we researched it, we found this state provision that allows for the variance, And we thought that was a good compromise between not allowing an alcohol permit at all, on the other hand, completely exempting the CBD and allowing alcohol permits anywhere. This would allow a variance process, and you all would make a case-by-case determination for each request. So this is not a request for a specific alcohol permit, a specific restaurant. This is just adding to the ordinance the option for a variance procedure. Should let you know that the San Angelo Independent School District did let us know that they're opposed to this. They would prefer to keep the ordinance the way it is, with no opportunity for an alcohol permit within 300 feet of a school. This is the section of our ordinance that would be amended, basically adding the language that you see on the screen, again, basically allowing a variance process. Again, we've narrowly written this variance to only apply to the Central Business District. It's a little bit hard to see here, but you can see in blue the Central Business District, and then the red box identifies the Central Freshman Campus. So the only areas we're really talking about are in this area within 300 feet of the Central Freshman Campus. Again, those would be eligible to come to you for a variance to get an alcohol permit. Staff does recommend approval of this amendment. This went to the Planning Commission back in January. They also recommended approval by a 6-1 vote. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Let me make sure I understand. So at this point, we are not approving it with the intent of giving someone, so no business right now is asking for this.
That's correct.
So that number one. And then number two, as it relates to state law, does the state law have any reaction to whether it's a school or a church?
The state law allows us to regulate alcohol permits within a certain distance of a school or a distance within a church.
Are they the same? Because this only talks about school.
This only relates to schools. You may recall, it's within the last couple of years, we brought to you a request from a church, in fact, that had asked us to implement the separation distance for alcohol permits from churches. We don't currently have that in our ordinance today. That was brought to the city council. The council at the time decided that was not the way we wanted to go at that time. And so currently in San Angelo, we do not limit or prohibit alcohol permits within a distance of a church.
We don't limit it.
We do not limit it. That's correct. Only from schools right now.
So a bar could open up next to a church.
That's correct.
And so if we pass this, a bar could open up next to a school.
No, this is worded, and actually I'm glad you asked that, because this is worded to only allow for a food and beverage permit that would be for a restaurant. So it's a different type of permit for a bar. That would not allow a bar in this circumstance. It would also not allow a liquor store. It would only allow the type of permit that is for a restaurant that's predominantly food, but that also wants to serve alcohol.
And when you say predominantly food, is that 51% or is that 80-20? Is that, when you say predominant, what's your ratio?
I believe the state law says it's 60%, but I'm not 100% confident in that answer.
Yeah, that's what the background said. Yeah.
Okay.
Do I have questions for John from council members? Billy?
I do, Mayor, thank you. And I would just like to state first that I guess I grew up in an era where schools and churches were respected above all. So this is contrary to, my perspective on whether we should allow alcohol near schools or churches, for that matter. But my question, John, is what are the other areas in this, because as I understand, this only applies to the Central Business District, right?
That's correct.
So what other areas within the Central Business District have schools that may fall within 300 feet of a restaurant or bar?
I'm not aware of any other schools that this would apply to in the Central Business District.
Now, how would you monitor when you talk about a restaurant that is at least 60% restaurant, 40% alcohol, how would you monitor that?
That's actually monitored by the TABC, Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission. So they issue different types of permits for a restaurant that serves alcohol or a business like a bar that is predominantly alcohol sales. And so that would be something that they would, if a restaurant sold too much alcohol in relationship to food, then the TABC would reclassify them as a bar, and they would be not in compliance with their restaurant permit.
And then I think my final question, depending on your answer, where the Central Freshman campus is relative to the 300-foot requirement, is it only that block? Is it that entire block there that where the red rectangle is?
Yeah, and in fact, the main Central Freshman campus is actually over here. We didn't show that because the 300-foot there doesn't affect the CBD. This is the part that is impacted, and that's actually the gym and a practice ball field, but that's considered part of the campus, so it's what we would measure from. So, I mean, technically, this red line should come out like this to include the campus as well, but it doesn't affect the Central Business District.
Okay, but the gym is where a lot of after-hour activities go on at the time where people would be dining and, having drinks, supposedly. So out of all of the Central Business District where restaurant or alcohol could be served, that block would be the only block affected.
Yes, I believe so,
Is that
as it
spot
stands
zoning?
today.
I mean, because I think it's odd, to Billy's point, you're going to have one little small area only out of the Central Business District that this, quote, applies to. Is that correct?
That's
Yeah.
right. I think the other way you could look at that is you can open a restaurant and serve alcohol anywhere within the Central Business District except this small area right there. And so this basically would allow someone who may want to operate a restaurant in that small area, it would allow them to come to you and ask for basically a special permission to get that alcohol permit.
So in essence, we would really be opening it up for all of the city. I know we right now are confining it to the Central Business District, but, if somebody else came along and wanted to do something near one of the elementary schools, I know it would come to the council, our planning commission for consideration, but once we set that precedence, once we open that gate, it is going to be awfully hard to close it again.
I think my answer to that would be we would be very hesitant to support opening this up citywide. I think our thinking was the Central Business District is so unique, and it's an area where we actually encourage a mixture of uses, whereas most of the city, we say, okay, this area is for commercial, this area is residential, over here is apartments. The Central Business District is an area where we actually encourage the mixture of churches, apartments, schools, businesses, all of those things to happen in close proximity to each other. And so that's the reason I think staff felt comfortable that applying this, but only in the Central Business District.
Well, I drove by several schools yesterday just looking at the commercial properties near the school where I could see someone wanting to say, oh, well, that corner right there is on the Houston Hart Freeway. It's within 300 feet of a school, but you need to make an exception for me too. So anyway, that's all I have, Mayor, on that.
Okay. Do I have, Harry, you have a question or comment?
Because this is in my district, I've been encouraging John and the planning group to look at what alternatives may be out there, because I've been approached by several people that would like to try to see if there's something we can do. And my only comment was, if this is allowed by state law, I want to support this, but I want to also make sure, as Billy said, that we know that this is a restaurant serving alcohol and not a bar serving food. So if we can meet that 60%, if that's the figure, then I want to support this, and we want to make sure that we're encouraging people to look at that downtown area. There's several buildings down there that could use some help, so.
I'm a big supporter of downtown, obviously, and I would love to see empty buildings utilized. I think my great concern with this one is the freshman campus, because that's at an age group where perhaps the children are a lot more susceptible and at an age where drinking is a little more enticing, or they're looking at it. So I have a little bit of caution relative to that, being the freshman campus versus a high school campus. But on the other hand, it obviously can be controlled by city council, but then we're picking and choosing which businesses we like or don't like, and I don't like that council get into the business of picking and choosing businesses that we think have the right to be there or not the right to be there. So I'm have a mixed feeling about this.
John, can you
Yes, please.
talk us through a little bit more? I know you talked about TABC was the one that was the monitor of this. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What happens when it starts exceeding the 40%? Do you know?
I actually don't know. I know that they can monitor that. I don't know if they regularly monitor that or if it's a complaint based. And I know that they have the ability to ask for receipts and ledgers and records of how much is sold for beer and alcohol. And some of you all may know better than I do, but they may even have to report that to the TABC periodically.
We have to report, obviously, sales tax on food separately from sales tax on liquors. But having said that, the idea that there would be somebody in Austin looking at everybody's food and liquor sales to determine if they fit under that percentage is unrealistic to believe that that happens.
But that's public information, is it not, Mayor? I mean, they publish alcohol sales tax every month in.
But not food tax.
Well, I
Yeah.
understand that, but it is still public information, so there's got to be a way that we know what those particular ones are. I mean, we do it out of the Elks organization. I sign the checks every month, so I know that you got food tax, you got alcohol tax, so there's got to be some way that the public can see that.
And I think if somebody got a restaurant permit and then began operating like a bar, at the very least in that circumstance, either the city or a citizen could file a complaint with the TABC to investigate it, and if they find that they are in violation of that permit, they could revoke their alcohol permit.
Well, the insurance companies also check on that because they insure based off of your relationship between food sales and liquor tax. But again, whether they would call somebody on it, I don't know, but you would certainly pay a much higher insurance bill if you were larger than the 60%. That being said. Lane?
I want to say I'm with Billy on the traditional and protecting the schools and churches, but I think with our efforts of what we want to do with downtown and the Chadburn Street project, this is going to be one of those odd exceptions with it coming too close to the central freshman campus. John, what kind of barriers do we have alley-wise between Chadburn and Oaks?
There's really not anything.
They go north-south, not east-west.
Yeah, and actually, ironically, we just had an issue here. There appears to be an alley right here behind this row on Chadburn. It's technically not an alley. It's actually owned by the school district, which has created some issues for some of these businesses here. But there really is no separation. Those properties on Chadburn right in this row, they literally back up to the school property.
What I'm getting at is, since there's no real barriers there, there's not going to be any barriers if they wanted to walk down the street to any other on Chadburn, since it's so prolific down there where we're trying to develop restaurants and life there.
But they're not within the 300 feet.
I know that. But the efforts, if they wanted to go further, if a school-age child wanted to go to one of the other restaurants, it's not too much more out of their way. But what I'm getting at is the Chadburn Street efforts that we're going through to make that rebuilt and revitalized. I think this is one of those exceptions that would help that out.
I agree.
No,
I
Billy, go
agree
ahead,
that,
please, and then
you know,
Lucy,
the
I'll get
exception
you.
would probably help out the development, but when you think about the safety, security of our students, and I think the mayor's point was very well stated, that we're looking at students who are in transitional age, and no matter how the 60% versus the 40%, and believe me, I'm not a teetotaler, so I do not object to having beer and wine and liquor in restaurants and served in restaurants. But my concern are students this age, and you can't always control what an individual's consumption is going to be. And if you're talking about, and Lane brought this up, that supposedly alley that's owned by the school, these businesses will have to have a rear exit. They have to have 2 exits. So that rear exit would probably be right onto school property. What would stop, you know, a bad situation from happening? And I just would rather see us not open up this variance and run that risk versus, you know, make the exception here. Thank you, Mayor.
Welcome, Lucy. You had a
Yes, I just had a statement. I agree with the mayor and with Billy and with everything that has been said. But to me, like we said, we want to develop downtown. I mean, I don't have a problem with that. My thing is that I don't think we need to do it in this area at the expense of the children. I mean, of the freshman campus, of those kids going to school around there. I don't think we should try to accommodate a person that wants to open a business there when we realize that it's right there next to that freshman campus. So that's
certainly
all.
the business is obligated to check ID, so if the business does their job, no child should be served the alcohol. So you put the burden back on the property owner, which is correct when you have a liquor license. It's your burden to carry and check the ID. And then the next question would be, of course, the illusion of how great it is to sit and drink and have fun. We all do, and we all love it. Not to say we don't. But the outdoor patio issue attached to it, because there's another issue if it's contained within the walls of a business. Another is if there's a patio outside the front of the business or in the back of the business, then again, that opens up a door of, do you want that to be next to the freshman campus? Just a thought.
I would agree with you, Mayor, but in this particular case, if the school district owns the alley, then I don't think any businesses that open there would have the opportunity, regardless of who they are, would have that opportunity to have outdoor patio or anything in that area. To Lane's point, you'd still have to have, or Lucy's point, you gotta have 2 entrances, but in the same token, they can't have anything out there if it belongs to another property owner. So I'm not sure that I share that exactly in that instance. So we'll go from there.
Tom, did you have a comment?
And I'll just take this from a parent. I'm fixing to place a kid at CFC. I've had one at CFC. I don't think I could sneak either one of them into a bar without somebody carding them. All right, I really don't. We're trying to develop that whole corridor. I'm a parent that's going to have children. It does not scare me at all. The fact that, you know, we've got a little faith in our governing body with council. We aren't going to let anything. And I think the whole part of that ordinance was maybe the marketing of what people do, not the fact that what they serve is what we're trying to prevent our kids from seeing. And it's the backside of all these establishments. But then again, you know, I don't want to limit anybody that's trying to develop Chadburn. I think it's an important part of the corridor we're going. So I'm in favor of rolling with what we got. I certainly see y'all's point, and I get that. But I think if we're going to try to develop Chadburn, we don't need to limit the people on what they have. And if, you know, if I go in there and have a sandwich shop or a steak and want to have a beer with it, I'd like to do that. Not for the fear that if you actually look on Google Maps, it's really a football field that's actually hidden within the 300 feet. I just don't see the fear in it, and I'll just just throw that out, my 2 cents.
Thank you from a parental comment. Thank you.
Um,
Billy?
Tom, I certainly hear what you're saying, and it's not the kids that I'm concerned about. It's the adults and the influence that potentially, is there. And I don't want to come across at all as sounding as though I am opposed to development on Chadbourne, because I think that is an important corridor for our downtown area. But I don't see that this would necessarily stop or limit. There are already businesses in that block that are not alcohol, and there could be other businesses that would go in there that would not be places that serve alcohol.
Billy, I hope
Would
you
you
can,
like to
you can
speak,
help
Harry?
me. Yeah, thank you. I hope you can help me fill some of those empty buildings down there.
Well, I would sure like to try, and I think it could be done without alcohol.
Do I have further comments or questions from council? With no further comments or questions from council, do I have a motion?
Move to approve as presented.
And I second.
And we are now open for public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to make comment?
Steve Hampton, we have, through the years, completely backed away with from a high standard with such reasoning as I've heard this morning, and I think that this is bad. We need to keep a high standard. We need to play to the high side of a personality. I think 300 feet is more than reasonable, and maybe should be larger than that. I think churches should be included. We've already backed completely away from the churches. So I would recommend that we maintain the standard and hold the line. What happens if in the future marijuana comes into the state? What's going to happen then? These are intoxicants that just similar nature. And so if we start backing away now, what are we going to do then? There's more in the future to address. Thank you.
Terry?
I'm Terry Jackson. I do serve on the Planning Commission. I was the opposing vote on that. One of the reasons being, I think we need to listen to our school district and what they have going on, their concerns for the children, and also, just as someone stated earlier, it's part of the people that actually go, and maybe they're waiting for their kids to get out of school, whatever, consume too much. There could be all kinds of accidents that involve these, but the gymnasium is used all day and a lot of nights and weekends. And I do think I want to develop all that area. I hate to see the empty buildings, but I think there's a lot of different businesses that could go in there, still pay the tax dollars. San Angelo is notorious for having restaurants start, and they don't always stay there. They're there for a short period of time. They think it's like easy money, I guess, and don't realize all the work that goes into it.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And they don't last. So I would still oppose this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have further public comment? With no further public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
4-3. You want to do it by hands? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Motion passes 4-3. 4-3.
Fails.
1, 2, 3. Who else was a no? Sorry.
It failed.
Failed 4-3. Item D, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case PD 19-01, a rezoning from the neighborhood commercial CN zoning district to a planned development PD zoning district to allow neighborhood commercial CN uses as well as self-service storage and a single-family detached dwelling located at 909 West Beauregard Avenue. John?
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is a case you saw a couple months ago. They asked to rezone it as kind of a first step. They asked to rezone it to neighborhood commercial. A portion of the property, you may recall, was zoned single family, so that got the whole property zoned to commercial. Now they're requesting a plan development to allow for the development proposal that we'll discuss in just a second. The future land use plan for the area does show this as neighborhood center, which is intended for neighborhood-oriented commercial development. And like I said, the zoning currently is neighborhood commercial. In neighborhood commercial, I should add that self-storage uses are not allowed by right, but do have to come before you either with a conditional use, which could be approved by the Planning Commission, or a plan development, which is what they've chosen to do in this case. Just a few pictures in case we need to come back to these, but the subject property is here to the right. It's used to be a used car dealership, has been vacant for some time. This is looking back west down Beauregard. Across the street, you can see the park across Beauregard, and this is the subject site as it looks today. And single-family residential is just to the other side, and that we can talk about that more later. Again, couple more pictures of the site. There's an existing fence as well as some heavy vegetation screening this site from the adjacent residential property. And in fact, the proponent in this case actually is the occupant and owner of that next door residential property. This is the site plan that's been proposed. You can see the building. Largely this part of the building would be the internal self-storage. This is not a self-storage that you might think of with big orange garage doors. It's all internal to the building. So from the exterior, the intent is that it appear to be like an office building. You would go in through normal glass doors, and then inside would be the storage units themselves. And then this smaller part of the building up here would be for the for office uses associated with a local business. I should point out while I'm on this slide, the plan development as it's written would accommodate a single residence. There are no current plans for that, but it would allow down in this lower area, down closer to the river, it would allow for a future single-family home if the property owner decides to do that at some point in the future. If you've been out to this area, you know that this area is very steep. So the subject site up here is up on basically the top, and then it slopes down towards the river in this direction. And so one of the concerns that's come up is the visual of this site from the river, but given the slope and all the vegetation that's within this area that will remain, there's very little, if any, visibility from the river to this site. These are the latest proposals, and I understand that perhaps the property owner and neighbors have gotten together and may have some updates to this. But the latest that staff has been provided is this drawing. Again, you can see, as I mentioned, that from the exterior, the intent is for it to appear like any other office building. It's higher quality materials with this limestone veneer that you can see a sample of here would be all along this base. You can see in the drawing. And then above that would be this sort of stucco-like material. And so there would be no exposed metal siding, anything like that. I'll also mention here the landscaping in the front and on the sides to help soften the appearance of the facility. Again, just a slightly different view of that same front view of the property. So this is Beauregard right in the foreground. And this is to the side on Park Street. You'll see additional landscaping along that side as you go towards the neighborhood on Park Street, as well as providing a sidewalk for safe pedestrian activity as you get closer to high-speed traffic on Beauregard. Let me go back a second. You'll notice that there are gates, so these will be accessible to customers, but they will be gated at least during certain parts of the day, and I'm sure the applicant can answer more questions about that. I'm not going to read through all of these. It's in your background.
Just 1 second, John.
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
Billy?
John, could you go back to the picture and show where the entrance would be, where you would you know, say a U-Haul would roll up and put stuff in their storage facility, where would that entrance be?
Show the side picture.
Yeah, this right here you can see is the driveway entrance. It may show better on this one, but yeah, so this would be the curb cut, which I believe is existing, but that would be the primary access onto the site from Beauregard there.
Into the storage building where you would actually unload, where would you go? Those two doors to the left?
Yeah, I think these 3 doors, and again, the applicant maybe can address that better, but I believe those 3 doors would lead into hallways with storage units inside.
Go to the side picture of the building. That one. So if we're looking into it to your far right, I believe there would be a gate to enter from the back side. Is that not right?
I'm going to defer to the
Okay,
property. I know the fire department required that they have emergency exits out the back of the building.
That's what I mean.
So that people could get out, but my understanding was those would not be generally accessible to the public.
So that's for emergency only.
That's my understanding.
And, all right.
We believe that this, with the design and the extra steps that they've taken to make it appear to be more like an office building, we believe this is compatible with the neighborhood center and the neighborhood commercial zoning. Again, I don't think we would have supported this had it been traditional self-storage, but given the steps that they've gone through to make this more compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, that is what led staff to support this project. We did send out our notices to the surrounding property owners. We received 25 in favor, including 5 within the 200 feet notification area. We received 6 in opposition, including 1 within the notification area. I should add here that there's been quite a bit of discussion. These are the formal written responses that we've received per the state law in terms of opposition and that sort of thing. We only count those that we've received formal written opposition. As I mentioned, staff is recommending approval as proposed. The Planning Commission did consider this and recommended approval by a 4-to-1 vote. A couple of commissioners had to recuse themselves on this particular case. Here's a summary of the listed conditions for the plan development. It would have to be compliance with all other neighborhood commercial standards other than those modified by the plan development. Has to be in accordance with the concept plan that you all would be approving. They would have to submit a final site plan just as part of the normal development process. No individual outdoor storage units. They all have to be inside that one building. Remote control gate access for the fire department. All lighting would be shielded so as not to negatively impact surrounding properties or residences. And then there's a non-conforming billboard on the site, and the recommendation was that be removed at the end of its current lease.
And when is that lease up?
That's unclear at this point. I think it was talked about in the meeting. And I want to say it's somewhere 10 to 15 year range, so it's not real soon. I think the idea was as part of this conditional approval, you have the ability to make non-conforming things go away over time. I think you would have some ability to make it go away prior to the end of the lease. We thought that was the most appropriate thing to do, was allow the current lease to expire, but then have the sign go away at that point. That's an overview of the summary. Again, as a plan development, you would be approving this with all these conditions, including the concept plan, which includes the drawings of how the building looks. I should add one more note. This will have to go to the Design and Historic Review Commission, and so they would have the ability to possibly place additional conditions. However, if there's any conflict between what you approve and what they approve, if it's minor, staff has the ability to adjust those things. But if it's any substantive change or disagreement, it would have to come back to you all for a final decision.
Okay. Lucy has a question, but also Rob, would you come forward? Because I think there's some items that we are looking at that you have worked out with some of the property owners that were in opposition, and I think are things that will make them more supportive, have made them supportive of the design elements that you're going to suggest we make. And then while you're doing that, Lucy, do you have a comment?
John, I just wanted to know, how many storage units are we talking about?
For that to these guys, yeah.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Rob Watkins. Also wanted to introduce my youngest daughter, Amberly Watkins. She helped tremendously on the design. She's an interior designer, so she's going to stand up here with me as we try to answer questions for you. So we'll take questions at this time.
It was, how many storage units are you talking about?
At this point, and let me make clear too, I own the 2 Chick-fil-A's in town, the freestanding units on Knickerbocker and Sherwood Way. And can we go back to the front picture? The one with the elevations that shows the proposed project, please. Right there.
There you go.
So on the left side would be our Chick-fil-A headquartered offices. HR, marketing, be very low impact to the neighborhood. And to the right, the self-storage would be Amberly's. So Amberly's wanting to make permanent residence here in San Angelo and expand her business opportunities. So to answer your question, Lucy, I'm helping Amberly with the design on this. Her step-grandfather has 5 of these in Middle Georgia, and we have a best friend also building some in North Austin. So we've got a lot of consulting that would be available to her, but 116 units, and are primarily going to be smaller in size. The whole purpose is to minimize U-Hauls and large trailers coming in and out of the property. We've been told by Tom Ward is his name, and he owns 5 of these. And typically you see these self-storage on 4, 5, 6 acres, that one of this size, once it's full, you might get 0 to 2 cars per day coming and going. You know how, I mean, we have 3 storage units, and we probably don't check on those 2 times per year. And so we live next door, my wife and I. Amberly lives a block over on Washington Street. So we have been able to get this property under contract a few months ago. And when you have a myriad of different, ideas or proposals that you could seek for this, very historic location, we felt it very important to pick something that has incredibly low impact to the neighborhood. We were there when it was a used car lot, and on Saturday mornings, they're cranking out their rock and roll music and vacuuming out the cars, and the dogs are barking. So we know what it's like to have the other side of a business that's not tranquil and does have a lot of commotion. So what other questions might we answer?
Could you talk about, for example, instead of the rock wall, the idea proposed by several residents that they would like to see that rock wall become a green hedge, for example?
Absolutely, and I wanted to back up a minute and thank the city of San Angelo, John James and Hillary Bucher and Jeff Fisher and many others that Amber and I have worked with. We started on this a long time ago, trying to work with the city to get this right and incorporate a lot of these ideas are from the city. And so also we have some opposition in the neighborhood. It's very clear. And one thing we're willing to do is work together. So instead of the rock wall that you see in the front, some of the residents would rather have a hedge wall. They think it'll look more inviting, as you drive into Santa Rita. And those kinds of suggestions we're wide open to. Another suggestion might be so Amberly's been doing all the renditions. It was all rock on the columns because we thought that was what more people would favor. Then we heard, no, soften this up and make it look more like neighborhood. So it went to the wrapped cedar, and now it may be going back to the rock. But, this still has to go through.
It's hard when you have 25 people designing, isn't it?
Yeah. This still has to go through DHRC, and so we feel like we can work all of those details out as we get to that point.
Okay. Do I have questions for Rob from council?
We want to thank
Lane?
y'all's efforts, Rob. Y'all have gone through a lot and a lot of discussions with the citizens around, and your willingness to incorporate the design changes that they are asking for. With that, it looks great. With these designs, I will move to approve. As
Wait, I
presented.
need to see if anybody else on council has questions before we have a motion. Do we have any other questions for council? Then the next question I have is, so if you're obviously going to work with citizens to address some of their issues before final approval, and I think there's an agreement that you will also work with Richard Round to sort of get his perspective on the design of it, small changes,
Absolutely.
warming it up. So what I want to do is just make sure everyone's aware that what you see today is not what would this project would look like in the final stages, but the 90% of what you see today is as it is. So we would be looking at landscape changing, some of the landscape changes, et cetera. The one last question I have before I finish my dialogue here is, where's the parking for the office building?
So we worked with the city of San Angelo with the entire footprint to understand how many parking spots would be required, which are 9. So the 9 parking spots are sufficient for both sides of the project, the self-storage as well as. This is, we won't even have Chick-fil-A listed on this building. Our parent company is Act as One. It's a corporation, and so we don't want to put Chick-fil-A up there because people might think, I can come in here and place a catering order.
I want a chicken strip.
Yeah, and so it's
Spicy number 4, please. Spicy number 4.
It's going to be for some of our meetings and HR and marketing and things like this. So we will not be taking up a lot of parking. In fact, I'll be walking to work, so from next door.
So the parking that we see is for both your staff in that office as well as the users of the self-storage.
That's correct.
And so just to ask again and verify, so the only entrance for people to come in and deliver their things is through that entrance there. They park there, use those 3 doors, which will be keypad, to go inside. Is that correct? Or do they go through?
It most likely will be remote.
Yeah.
Because we're working with the DOT to make sure that we're as safe as we possibly can be, and that's probably the safer option is a remote. The gates will be open Monday through Friday, approximately 8:30 to 5. So the gates will be deactivated.
Okay, so John was saying that when you pull in that driveway, which this sketch does not reflect, that you would drive between those 2 buildings, the office building and the storage building, to go around back. Is that true?
Oh, you won't drive
That's what I
around back.
thought. You can't. You park in front, and that's it.
Yeah, we worked with the fire marshal. There's just enough space in the back for the emergency exit doors, as well as we negotiated to leave the tree line as you see it. We gave up some space to do that, create the green wall effect. We have pictures. I don't think it's necessary, from the river that depicts that you can't see this building. You barely can see the top of the billboard. And one further thing to state about the billboard, we'd be willing to work with you, the council, to try to negotiate with Lamar to take the sign down right away. They've indicated that they might do that. There's a minimal amount of revenue on that, which Amberley would be more than happy to give up as part of this deal. So if any of you feel like you can assist in that process, we can get that billboard down just as soon as Lamar agrees to it.
That would be great. All right, so just to emphasize, you cannot drive between those 2 buildings. That you drive in, you park, you walk in.
That's right.
Okay. And we're going to agree to continue to work with the citizens on a landscape plan and some minor architectural changes.
We will.
Okay. With that, I will entertain any other questions from council before Daniel?
Mayor, I just want to say, if you're going to work with those individuals you need to work with, I know we have another reading or the next time out, next city council meeting, so it had to be within the next couple of weeks to make sure we have it on the agenda again for that second reading as well.
So with the second reading, we would approve, of course, the second vote, but the changes. So we have a 2-week window to accomplish that.
Is that possible?
So more changes, Amberly.
Not
No,
a
no.
lot, enough to make everybody 90% happy.
Absolutely.
Okay. With that, Lane, you want to go ahead and state your motion?
Move to approve.
Do we need to say move to approve with the changes?
I don't think they've really been clarified, just move to approve the concept of making the changes that will be presented at the next meeting.
Okay, with that would be in the motion, and there's a second?
Second.
And a second from Tommy. Any public comment?
One last question, Rob. Could you bring back the chicken salad?
In a combo with the spicy deluxe salad.
Good morning, Mayor, Council. I'm Steve Eustace, and I represent First Financial Trust Department and the Dotson Estate in marketing this property that's under contract to Rob. When I first was analyzing this property, as it's been pointed out, and actually it's about 55% of this property is on that steep hill down to the river. And my thought was, who am I going to find that has a use for the upper area that's going to have an incentive to maintain that area sloping down? Because it's been a problem. Transients, homeless people, drug activity have been a constant problem there. Well, no one better than the person right next door to take care of it. So we're happy about who we're dealing with. On the zoning, it's now CN and just allowed by right. Is vehicle repair, retail, smart animal vet clinic, restaurants, food trucks. So this opportunity due to a planned development for something that you can put a lot of control over, I think is really good. And I'm going to skip some of my comments. They've already been made. But I did want to say that I think this is a real appropriate place for a high-quality, climate-controlled indoor storage facility. And I want to paraphrase something that was in the November-December issue of the Self-Storage News, which is a trade publication of the Texas Self-Storage Association. The trend in self-storage is to core urban areas, where dwellers are turning to self-storage to manage the lifestyle of fewer belongings. They are building in high-end residential areas or high-end commercial areas, but are being required to build a better facility with better facades. Extra money is being required to be spent to make them attractive. Then I also want to say that some of the comments were about that these belong in industrial or warehouse areas. I want to point out that the code allows for these by right in general commercial and by conditional options in CN and CO. You'll also find these type of, you'll find many self-storage facilities in the Southland Park area. There's 2 facilities on Meadow Creek between College Hills and Southwest. There's a new one Southwest and Twin Mountain Drive right across from Lamar School. All of these back up to residential areas, but they're all the old traditional style outside door. This is just a really new concept in storage in San Angelo, and there's not anything like it. I think it'll be a real enhancement to the neighborhood, and my time is up. Thank you,
Steve. Any further public comment? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tommy Roberts. I'm with Lamar Outdoor Advertising. The billboard's been brought up a couple times, and so I figured it'd be good for me to speak on it. The billboard is there currently, to answer your question, the lease on is currently 13 years. But however, we are open to removing that structure. I know we've had some some conversations with John, and it's in close proximity to the River Corridor. And so it is valuable to us. I mean, we do have advertisers that utilize it to direct people to the downtown area. So it's not like we're giving up nothing. It is a valuable structure for us, and it is a grandfather non-conforming structure. And so you would not be able to build new there. However, because of its grandfather status, that's why it's still there. It was built prior to the current sign ordinance going in. But just wanted to say, like I said, we're definitely open to working with the city on its removal. And so I just wanted y'all to hear from us on that.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important statement. Thank you. Any further public comment? With no further public comment, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We are now going to take a much-needed break, I've been told. So let's give ourselves 10 minutes.
Okay.
And that means that we would be back here at 10:50. Meeting back to order. And that means we will be discussing item E. It is the first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving case PD 19-02, a request for approval of a rezoning from the general commercial, heavy commercial zoning district to the planned development zoning district to allow for uses permitted within the general commercial, heavy commercial CGCH zoning district and an off-site sign with digital billboard face located at 3410 Knickerbocker Road. John?
Thank you. Again, John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. This is proposed for a planned development. It's a little over an acre. The Sonic site is right there. You can see car wash is adjacent, and then a vacant property adjacent to the other side. The plan, the future land use plan for this area is neighborhood center. And you can see that it does back up to a neighborhood area, and that's the primary reason that it's neighborhood center. It's currently zoned CGCH, general commercial, heavy commercial. Based on the neighborhood center designation, the CGCH zoning is not considered appropriate for that area. And so going to either CG or even more appropriate would be a neighborhood commercial zoning in that area. And so that would be, if you're inclined to approve this plan development, staff would be supportive of going away from the CGCH and going to either CG or CN, partly to protect that surrounding neighborhood to the back there. This is a little bit hard to read, but there is an existing billboard at this location on the vacant property next to Sonic. That billboard is going to be removed, and what, as part of this plan development, Lamar is asking to move that billboard to this location on the Sonic property. The existing Sonic sign would stay where it is. This billboard sign would be located a little bit behind that existing sign. And this was the original plan for a digital billboard at that location. In conversations with the surrounding property owners that were in opposition, I think they've revised their request to go to a static billboard, basically a non-digital billboard, like the typical billboard you think of that's not, doesn't have a display screen, but is just paper, vinyl, whatever they put on the face of it. You can see here they'll also be angled slightly so that the signs will face traffic, and that benefits the neighborhood back here in that any lighting, or if it were digital, those lights would be facing outward and would not be shining towards the rear of the property and towards the neighborhood. Here you can see the existing Sonic sign and the existing billboard sign. Again, the new billboard sign would come up in somewhere in this area, and as you could see on that, I think the previous picture, go the other direction, it would be sort of a flag shaped. Instead of being centered on the post, it would go off to the side a little bit. A few pictures of the area, probably pretty familiar with the corridor. Staff is recommending denial. The primary reason we're recommending denial of this is the sign ordinance currently prohibits new billboards along that stretch of Knickerbocker unless you're in industrial zoning. We don't believe planned development is the appropriate tool to allow a billboard. If you all think billboards should be allowed on Knickerbocker, We believe that you should amend the sign ordinance to say that. Past councils have adopted an ordinance that says no new billboards on Knickerbocker. We want this to be a cleaner, clutter-free corridor without new billboards, and as existing billboards go away, they aren't replaced. So that's the existing sign ordinance we have in place. We think using a planned development to get a billboard in a corridor where the council has previously said no new billboards is basically going around the intent of the sign ordinance. And again, the more appropriate remedy, if that's your desire, is to actually amend the sign ordinance to allow new billboards along Knickerbocker. As number 2 says, we've consistently recommended against these. You may recall a similar request just within the last year or so on South Bryant. A property owner had asked for a similar plan development that was almost exclusively to allow a billboard. There were really no other items within the plan development, and you all denied that one as well. And I've already addressed number 3. If you think that's appropriate, an appropriate location for billboards, we need to change the sign ordinance to say that. We did send out our notifications to the surrounding 200 properties within 200 feet. We received 1 in favor and 4 in opposition. As I understand it, the applicant has spoken with some of those opponents, and they've addressed some of their concerns, particularly the going from a digital billboard to a static billboard in that location. Again, staff is recommending denial. We would be supportive of a planned development or even a straight rezoning to either general commercial or neighborhood commercial, but the planned development that would additionally allow a billboard is something that we've consistently recommended against. The Planning Commission did take this up. They did recommend approval. It was a 4-3 vote, close vote on that one, but they did recommend approval to the council. As a quick overview, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
My first question is, so the first request was to move it from one location to another location.
That's right. In any case, this billboard here will be going away. The request is basically to allow them to move it or construct a new one in this new location. So there would not be 2 billboards in any case. They would, again, the proposal is to move the billboard from the current location to a new location, literally just 50 feet away.
But our sign ordinance doesn't allow for another sign to go there.
That's correct. They're basically asking through a plan development to get around the requirements of the sign ordinance.
Questions from council? Lane?
John, are the heights of the old and the new the same at 35 feet?
I would defer to the applicant. It appears that they're proposing a 30-foot, 5-foot sign. I don't know what that existing sign is. I'm sure they can answer that.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
I know our existing ordinances says no new signs. I know there's been some compromising that has been happening. I would be okay with this taking one down and moving it 50 feet. Is that what you said, 50 feet away?
I'm just guessing. It's just literally from one property to the next property. I don't know the exact distance away.
And keeping it a static billboard. I know that was in high discussion, but along with this, whenever we get to it, I would like to look at the neighborhood commercial zoning in the back to help protect that back area.
I strongly believe we shouldn't make any decisions that, in effect, require relooking at our sign ordinance. That sign ordinance is a consistent issue, negative. It creates so much drama and trauma every time the sign ordinance comes up. So I believe any decision that we make must maintain honoring the sign ordinance that has already been approved and in place.
How long has that sign ordinance been in place, John?
I'd have to look. I don't know off the top of my head.
It was
when
back
that
in the
existing-
mid-'80s, the sign ordinance was back in the mid-'80s.
But they brought it back up in the during Sean Lewis's and Elizabeth Grindstaff's era here, so it was renewed, reviewed, and redone in the 90s, if not I should say the 2000s, not the 90s.
And Mayor, if I could, I remember that because there was so much passion around that sign ordinance that came up, and I was glad when they finally resolved it and got agreement, and the council voted on it. I guess, as we looked at one of those pictures that you had, John, it looks like there are an awful lot of signs on Knickerbocker Road. Why we would want to add another one that's going away, I'm not real clear on. And Sonic has a sign, and as I understand it, this is either going to go on Sonic's property or close to it. They already have a sign, so to me, it just seems like overkill to have another sign, even though I recognize it would be advertising other businesses and other opportunities. I just, I don't know. I guess I support what the mayor said, that we need to stick with the sign ordinance, because every time you make an additional exception, you're going to have to keep considering those exceptions. And I think Lane mentioned that we've done some compromises over. I don't know what those are. I obviously wasn't here, but I just, again, hate to open up that can of worms with making an exception to an ordinance that has been on place, and I think we've tried to uphold it as much as we could.
The first application was for a dynamic LED billboard that would be scrolling advertising, just like the one that's across from Outback and O'Reilly's.
Mhm.
So it would be like that. They have changed it to just a static billboard where it would be one advertisement until they change it.
Just the number of businesses that have their own individual signs. If you drive down Sherwood Way and even Knickerbocker, the eye catches so many signs. It can be quite distractive for drivers, and you can only read so much in 3 seconds, or whatever that second is that it takes you to drive by something. I just think we need to honor the sign ordinance. It's there for a reason. It was debated thoroughly when it was approved, and I don't believe we make exceptions. We stick to a sign ordinance as approved, where I stand.
To answer that previous question, the sign ordinance was adopted in 1996. The last major revision looks like it was 2003. A couple minor revisions since then, but the last big discussion of it appears to be 2003.
And we made a decision, as you mentioned before, about not allowing a planned development to be created to put up a sign on Bryant Boulevard some time ago, about a year ago. We were all on council then. And so stick with a game plan, stick with a sign ordinance that's in place. Yes, Harry, please.
Well, if it's 2003 since the last time that we revisited the sign ordinance, that's 16 years ago. I really think, outside of this particular thing, we really need to take another look. Today, the business of signs and advertising is much, much different than it was 16 years ago. So whatever decision we make today, I think we really need to go back and it'll take another look. And I understand what Billy said. There's a lot of passion around signs. People think it clutters up. But in the same token, businesses that have businesses in San Angelo want to make sure that people know where they are. So they're interested in marketing their own business. And so I'd like to see us go back and at least take another look at that. Like, again, regardless of whatever decision we make today.
Any further comment or questions for John? All right, I will make a motion then that says, now you're going to have to help me with the motion because this language gets pretty confusing.
Let me ask this one question, Mayor, if I can. If denial of the sign proceeds, how is that going to impact the overall zoning?
Well, you have a couple of options. One, you could just deny the request altogether, and it would go back to just the normal CGCH zoning that's there today. You could approve a plan development with CN or CG-based zoning and strike the billboard provision, or allow the billboard provision if that's your desire. You could approve it as requested. I believe you could rezone the property to CG or CN straight zoning. I think the only reason they're asking for the PD is for the billboard. So if you're inclined not to approve the billboard, you have those other options if your goal is to rezone. And as I
Rezone
understand,
and deny billboard.
yes.
I'd like to hear from my two constituents on their preferences.
Do I have anyone who would like to speak to this? Please come forward and state your name.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Linda Wilson. I'm a member of the Parkview Lakes Homeowners Association. I'm in Lane's district. He has been very supportive of us in trying to figure out what to do with this. We came before the Planning Commission and we were voted down. I did not realize at that time that your sign ordinance prohibited any new signage. So I'm very confused as to why the Planning Commission would approve putting another sign up when you had an ordinance that said, don't put any new signs up. It could have saved Ms. Mertz and I a whole lot of sleepless nights if we had known this. So we came to a position where Mr. Roberts came to us from Lamar Sign after we were voted down, and he made a compromise to us, and I'd like to commend him and his company for trying to come to the Homeowners Association and at least try to work with us to get rid of the static, get rid of the digital sign that we certainly did not want in our area. The car wash that was put up at the corner of Parkview and Knickerbocker has been a really sore spot for all of us.
You really need to stick to the discussion at hand.
Thank you. So that is the reason we're asking for the zoning to be considered as well. That's why I'm going to tie that in. Because we already have a problem in our homeowners' property values, and really the neighborhood has suffered. So that's the reason we objected to the digital sign being put up. Had we known that the sign ordinance was as strict as it was in San Angelo, we could have probably just said, okay, Planning Commission, you have a sign ordinance, you can't do this, and we wouldn't be standing here today. I'm reiterating. But I would like to say that anything that you can do to keep our quality of life in our neighborhood. Someone said at the meeting, everybody wants to know what you have for a sign on Knickerbocker, and it's very valuable to Lamar. Well, everybody knows that if you're a real estate agent in San Angelo, you want to know, are there any of those homes on those lakes for sale? So we're trying to protect property values. We appreciate all of the input that's come from Lamar. They've tried very hard to work with us. Again, had we known that no new signs were supposed to be put up, it would have been a different argument. But they did try, and they came back to us and said, we'll make it a static sign, we'll make it 35 feet high, and that will be nice. And the owner of the land, Mr. Moore, who owns the Sonic property, was willing to work with us. He told Lamar that it was okay with him to put up a static sign. But we also asked, would you be willing to rezone your property behind Sonic to a neighborhood, commercial neighborhood, so that we would have a buffer zone? And I think that's what Mr. Jones and the Planning Commission staff wanted to do, is sort of put a buffer between commercial and residential. There are a lot of people who live in those apartments who work every day who can't come before you and speak. They're at work. So it came to us to say, well, I think I want to go and speak for them as well. The digital sign would have shined right down into their windows. The traffic, the noise from the car wash, it affects them, but they don't have the time to get off from work and come down here and talk to you. So we're talking to you for the people who also live in the apartment complexes there as well. Not just the nice homes on the lakes, but the people that are next door to also storage units and restaurants and car washes, and their lives are impacted every day as well. So what we would like to have is just our neighborhood back, if you don't mind. I don't think you'd want a sign or a car wash in your backyard. So please keep that in mind when you're voting, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Although we're doing this public comment prior to a motion on the floor, so, but come forward.
Morning again.
Morning.
I'm Tommy Roberts, 4282 Trainer Drive in Abilene, Texas. I represent Lamar Outdoor Advertising. So I appreciate Mrs. Wilson and her comments. And so initially, we went to planning and zoning, as she mentioned. We applied for this as a digital billboard to be relocated to Mr. Moore's property as CGCH. It did pass 4-3 but with a lot of the comments, public feedback, I did meet with the Wilsons that day after the meeting and said, listen to their feedback on what they were most concerned about. And they're concerned about the intensive use of the property. And so we did meet with staff the next day and did change our application to digital. We changed it from digital to static. So basically what we're doing is just requesting that the existing structure that's 65 feet away, that we're able to relocate it. It does not result in a new net addition to billboards in the city. It keeps everything the same. I know that there has been some talk about one that was denied. However, on December 19, 2016, planning staff recommended the use of changes to the future land use. This is going to be VP 16-03 and PD 16-08, where the future land use was changed from neighborhood to neighborhood center to allow for a billboard and development of a piece of property on Loop 306. Also, with the PD, plan development was used to develop a lot to allow for a billboard, where under office commercial, where billboard signage was not allowed. So here's a case of a net addition to the billboards in San Angelo that was outside of the sign ordinance, where it was approved unanimously 6-0 by the city council. And so I know that attached to that was a plan for development of an office, all that. Well, that property is owned by Sinad now, where the structure sits, and no development ever took place. So it was only for the use of the billboard in that area. And in that situation, staff recommended neighborhood commercial that was okay for a billboard to be in neighborhood commercial. They moved it from neighborhood to neighborhood commercial. And so in this instance, I feel like there's two examples. I understand that this is legislative and you guys are trying not to set precedents. However, we do have a case where one was denied that resulted in a net addition, and one was approved that resulted in a net addition. And that billboard was digital. And so there is a great need to the community. I know that we're on time limit, but as the applicant, I'm going to ask for a little bit of leniency on this. If you look at that structure, we've had 29 different advertisers on that structure over the last 3 years. All of them are local. And so the way we use that billboard is in a pool of our billboards. We have approximately 60 of these in the community. I'll give you an example. In Abilene, we have about 140. So in San Angelo, we have less than half of that. Our occupancy remains very high, typically over 90%. And so that area of Knickerbocker only has 3 billboards west of what would be the Red Arroyo. And so it's high demand, like Mrs. Wilson said. I mean, real estate's all about location, and that area is high demand for us where people are trying to reach consumers, making consumer decisions. And so if we lose this, it weakens our entire pool of the way we sell it. It's not just one advertiser that stays up there for a long time. It's a group or pool of advertisers.
You'll need to wrap up your comments,
Sure.
please.
And so in closing, what I would just ask is that you keep in mind that the billboard is not changing. We're just moving it over 65 feet per your permission. And that we would keep it static, and that it's really a high demand location for our business community. A lot of what y'all have talked about here today, we're intertwined with a lot of those things, and the other thing I'll say is when the sign ordinance was written 25 years ago, 16 years ago, a lot has changed. And so we're the only media or traditional media left that has a growing audience. Everything else is under attack by digital. And so our audience continues to grow.
You need to wrap it up, please.
Okay.
Thank you so
And
much for your comments.
I
Thank
ask
you.
you for approval. Thank you.
Do I have further comments from the audience?
My name is Susan Mertz. I'm a resident.
It's already going on.
There she goes. Okay, right.
It's a scare tactic.
Anyway, I am in support of what the city planning department has recommended. I understand the need for business. My family is in business here, so I am absolutely pro-business. But I am also a quality of life person. I have worked in planning myself for 10 years. I hold a master's degree in urban and regional planning from the University of Southern California, and I've also worked as a volunteer in San Angelo, helping to establish tax increment financing districts. the Historic Preservation Commission overlay, and also I wrote the RUDAP plan. So for me, what happens in the future is what is important. And I think that the sign ordinance is great the way that it stands. And I understand that advertising has changed, but I also understand that with these changes in technology, you also have issues that come with it. For example, as Mrs. Wilson pointed out, the residents that live in the apartments who cannot be here are already listening to the noises from a car wash. Now, do we need to subject them to digital light noise? I will be able to see that sign. And I understand that we're now doing it static, but I would ask that we uphold what is written in the sign ordinance and that you also keep the zoning intact as it now stands. Thank you so very much for my comments. And once again, I am looking for the future and the quality of life issues that are often left by the side when business decisions are made. Thank you.
One question, John, the zoning as it stands, it's right now heavy commercial.
Yes, it's CGCH, so general commercial, heavy commercial. And so given the comments, and I think our recommendation would still be to go to at least general commercial. And as you recommended earlier, based on some of the discussions with the neighbors, you could go CG at the front where the Sonic is, and the vacant piece behind could go neighborhood commercial.
Is that what you were referring to as stands? Not keep it how it is with heavy, but change it to neighborhood commercial? Okay, just to clarify.
All right, so we do not have a motion on the floor, so with that, I'll make them. Does anyone want to make a motion, or I'll make a motion? Terry, you want to come forward? Sorry, did not realize we still had public comment.
Just as an advertiser, I do advertise on the boards. The way it works with my advertising is it floats around everywhere, different places. I know Billy said she'd been seeing mine on Arden Road recently. And anyway, what we want to do, Knickerbocker is has more traffic going down there, more eyes that see those signs. This would be taking away a lot of advertising for different companies. I think First Financial, the last time I was over there, was one of the advertisers right across the street. So it does have a lot of eyes on it. If it is going to be static and not the digital, then we'd just be moving it over to another spot, same sign, same everything. So I would appreciate you voting for it. Thank you.
John, when we make a decision to, when we say in the sign ordinance there will be no new signs, is moving a sign from point A to point B no new signs?
Yeah, the way the ordinance works is in order to put up a new sign, whether it's moving it or it's brand new, you have to get a sign permit. And then we cannot issue a sign permit that isn't in a location authorized by the sign ordinance, or through something like a plan development. So as far as the sign ordinance is concerned, the moving of the sign is a new sign.
Mayor, if I may. Yes. John, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I know from studies, when we start to look at the aesthetic of appeal of a corridor such as this one, a billboard really takes away from a view. It becomes detrimental to an area. I do understand as far as advertising, there's different means of advertisement. Let's not forget that. But when we look at that, when the ordinance was looked at and changed back in the 90s, even now though, as far as urban design, and you start looking at how areas should develop, the constant there is that billboards do need to go away. So that hasn't changed. From all the studies that I've read, that hasn't changed. We do want investment in those areas, in this corridor specifically. We do have an ordinance in place, and I do agree with you, Mayor. I think that we have ordinances in place. We shouldn't find for ways to get around those ordinances. And it's something that I highly recommend that we uphold the way it's written at this point. So again, the way that I look at it is from the overall aesthetic appeal of it and future investment in this area.
Any further public comment before Terry?
So on Planning Commission, we have variances that come forward nearly, well, not monthly, but several times a year that are variances on the sign ordinance. We listen to those, we make recommendations, we do all that. I do not think they come to city council after that. We had one yesterday. So there are new signs going in. There are new signs in different places, just for that clarification. Thank you.
Linda? No, you get 3 minutes.
I get 3, then gonna buzz me like you did?
Yes, ma'am.
Susan buzzed. I'm going to say this, and I hope I don't offend, but if I do, should not anyone who is advertising on these signs be voting on whether or not we have them or not? I'm just going to ask that question. I think it's a conflict of interest.
Teresa, is there any conflict of interest?
Well, this lady just said she advertised on them, and she sits on the Planning Commission. My question is, should someone who has a vested interest in this not recuse? When we were at the Planning Commission and we were discussing this to begin with, several members of the Planning Commission recused themselves on the proposed storage units, I believe it was. And I thought that was very nice and very above board that people would do that. That speaks very highly of their integrity. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Teresa, did you want to make a comment?
Yes, conflict of interest generally deals with somebody having a financial interest in a project, not necessarily just a use interest. So just the fact that somebody uses a facility does not necessarily disqualify them from having a discussion about it.
Hold on one second. Teresa, finish your comment, and then I'll listen to Terry, and then Linda, you can come back up with that comment. Go ahead, Teresa.
I think my comment was done that, I mean, unless she had a direct interest in that particular sign, not that that sign might bring future, financial benefit to her, then it would not be a conflict under the law. She really wouldn't be affected any differently than if I had used that sign or any other citizen. So that's really what we look for, different interests from what anybody else might have.
Okay, thank you. Terry?
So starters, I believe that is a billboard. Mine are smaller signs. So I've never advertised there. I have no conflict of interest there. The two people that she's referring to on the other side for the one that we previously heard, one of those works at the bank that First Financial is the trustee of, and the other one had an interest in purchasing the property. So they really need to recuse themselves. On mine, I do not feel that I was in any way, shape, or form going against what the rules are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Linda, did you want to make another comment?
You wouldn't advertise if you didn't expect you were going to get a financial benefit out of it. That's the whole purpose of advertising. So if you are advertising, you're expecting to benefit financially. So yes, that is a conflict of interest under the law that I studied at the University of Alabama. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment? See, this is the same debate every time the sign ordinance comes up. It never ends. So what we need to do is figure out how to live within the current signage ordinance.
I'm Duke Wilson. I live in the area. I was driving this way, and on Southwestern's sign, it's a digital sign. There's spaces that aren't filled. They got advertisements asking for advertisements. So you got spaces left.
Thank you, Duke. I'm going to take a deep breath and see if there's any further comment. Yes, please.
Good morning. My name is David Bryant. I'm representing the Sonic Drive-In that's in question here. You all certainly have a challenging decision to make on this. I would just like to state to you on behalf of Keith Moore, who's the local franchisee and has operated Sonics here in town for about 40 years, that San Angelo has been an absolutely great city for us to live and work in, and we anticipate remaining here for a long time yet to come. That particular Sonic is a very successful and very highly decorated Sonic within the Sonic chain too, so I'm very proud to report that to you as well. Some of you may be familiar with the layout of the property where the Sonic is actually close to Knickerbocker Road and then extends quite a ways back to Sweetbriar, back behind. Roughly half of the property is developed and half of it is not. The back half close to Sweetbriar, we've had 24 years now to develop that property. You can see we've done nothing with it, and I can also tell you that we have no plans to do with that moving forward.
So changing the zoning for the property behind you would not bother you?
You know, the owner's preference is to be general commercial and nothing lower than that, because he wants to retain his property's value as well. So I'm sure everybody understands that. So I just wanted to put that out there for you to factor into your consideration. I just thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
I would just like to state that.
Just please restate your name again.
No problem. Tommy Roberts with Lamar. I mean, we saw in the previous case where staff has compelled a landowner to remove a billboard that Lamar Outdoor operates. And that, to me, is a significant departure from typical protocol. We don't normally see that in our business for cities to get in the business of what we do with our leaseholders. And in an effort to work with the city, I'm open to removing that structure. And what I ask of you, and this is not a quick pro quo, but I am seeking help on this case. And it's a structure that is only 60% of the allowable size by that zoning. For a general commercial, we can build up to 300 square feet. It's only a 200 square foot structure. It's one that's existing, so it's not going to impact the overall corridor because it's already existing. We're just going to, like I said, we're trying to move it over. This opportunity for the city to lower the zoning from heavy commercial to just general commercial, which in the future land use, it's been stated that all CGCH the city wants to see go away. So without this change agent, how would we ever arrive at that? It would always stay heavy commercial. So the neighborhood gets a win because we go to a lower intense use where higher intense uses, heavy commercial, cannot be allowed there. So the landowner's compromising, Lamar's compromising, the neighborhood is compromised. And so it's a win-win-win, I feel like, all the way around. So I'm asking for your help on this one little sign. We've definitely lost other signs where they've been blown down, and I've not come to you for help. And even the staff is trying to recommend we remove billboards. And so I just ask in this instance that you give me a hand, help me to maintain my business, continue to help San Angelo grow. I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm waiting for more public comment. Have we all expressed ourselves today? No one else is going to speak? Then we need to make a yes, Lane, did you have a question or comment?
Both. No question. I think the comment that I have, though, is I think we need to interpret what the law is meaning on new signage, whether it be new as in a new location just because it has the word new in it, or net change is what I'm hearing. Whatever the outcome is here, I want to protect the backside, so no matter if I need to make the motion to make sure that is neighborhood commercial and keep the front CG, then I'm fine with that. If the compromise is to make sure that happens is to keep the sign static on Sonic's property, then that's the route that I will go. But that's why I wanted to hear from my constituents first, is if it came down to the vote, whatever to protect the backside of the neighborhood is how I was going to go. So I'll make the motion, since there has been some compromising going, to allow for the sign static in the new location, since there is no net change, and to keep the zoning, not to keep the zoning, but to change the zoning in the back portion to neighborhood commercial with the front general commercial. Does that satisfy Linda? Susan?
Let's just wait a minute. That is the motion. Let's see if there's a second, and then we'll open it back up for public comment. We have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
How do we draw the line of what's allowable between the front and the back?
John, you want to come forward? Because several things we have to do here. One is the interpretation of the signed ordinance, which I asked about earlier, whether
Sounds like there's
moving
two.
a sign that's up to a new location is truly a new sign, and then, so that's one issue, is the signage issue. The other is the zoning issue. So we have, in essence, although this reads as one motion, I'm not so sure that we don't want to split it into two separate
sounds like these are
motions
two
and make
items.
sure that we better understand what it is we're doing here.
I'll take the second question first. I think as I would view it, the line would be basically at the back edge of the developed part of the Sonic property, so that all of the existing developed Sonic would remain CG, and then the undeveloped part in the back would become the CN, if I understand your intent.
John,
And what happens to the property to the west of that big open area?
That would, as of
Is
today.
that spot zoning then?
It is not.
Okay.
I think the future land use plan for this entire area would suggest that CN zoning is the most appropriate, but these things happen one case at a time often, and so even though, especially based on the discussion, it would most likely be more appropriate for that to be CN, that's really not before you today.
Yeah.
But zoning one piece today wouldn't result in an illegal spot zoning. As far as the other question, and maybe that was just my use of terminology as of a new sign, the sign ordinance is clear on this issue that installing a sign, whether it's new or moving, is a sign that requires a permit and that has to be authorized in the location that it's going in. So I don't think there's any lack of clarity in the sign ordinance itself. Perhaps just in the way I explained it was where the confusion was.
And Billy, you wanted some comment or question?
John, if you have two different zoning designations on one property, does it have to be replatted?
It does not. We often don't like to see a property with what we call split zoning, part of the property one zoning, part of it another, but there's no reason that can't be the case. We've got tons of it around the city, and in cases like this is where we sometimes see it as being appropriate, where you want the development that's right on Knickerbocker to have a wider range of possible uses, but then as you get to this, this backside where you've got homes back here, you might want to transition it back to a lesser zoning district. So that I wouldn't consider that inappropriate in this area.
So, what Mr. Bryant said, if we do that, would that not impact his, the owner's, lowering his value for the property? Because as I understood him to say, the owner of the property does not want to lose their value.
Well, neighborhood commercial by design doesn't allow the wider range of uses that general commercial does. Part of the reason for that is neighborhood commercial is intended to protect nearby residential.
Right.
So some of the more obnoxious uses, and I don't mean that in such a negative way, but uses that are more negative near neighborhoods are not allowed. Some auto repair kinds of uses and that sort of thing wouldn't be allowed in CN. So in that respect, it would limit the range of possible uses on the property. But again, that's part of the
So changing
point.
the zoning, tell me what could be built there.
Pretty much any retail. I mean, the Sonic would be allowed in neighborhood commercial, any retail. The things that are added in general commercial would include things that, like certain auto repair type uses, things that include more activity outdoors rather than all being indoors. That's kind of the primary differences between CG and CN.
So like a car wash couldn't go in?
You know, I would have to look at that. If that's the direction you want to go, something like Councilman Carter is suggesting, on second reading, we can bring back to you more information on the difference between CG and CN, we could go back and look exactly where that boundary would be, so that when you vote on it on second reading, you would know a little more about it. And obviously, on second reading, you could change your mind if the new information made you rethink it.
So is it possible, can we split these between a vote on the zoning and a vote on the sign? Or since you've presented them both together, do we have to do it all as one?
I think you could vote on each individual issue separately, and then once you've got that consensus on each of those two issues, you would then take an overall vote on the entire case as those previous two votes had indicated, if that makes sense. And I would suggest, if you're going to go that direction, vote on the billboard first, because whether or not you want to approve the billboard would make a difference in whether or not you go with a plan development or just straight zoning when it comes to the actual zoning of the property.
Yes, yes, Harry.
I got to ask this question. Lane's proposing that we split this particular property as a transition, but the property east of that is CG. Is that correct?
I'd have to look. It's either CG or CGCH. It's on this next slide. Yeah, everything, all of this color is CGCH.
So I don't know that we can, it's going to make a difference in transition to the residential neighborhood to do that back portion of that particular property unless we take it in that whole section.
The reason why I asked about that property next to it, because that's why I asked if it was spot zoning, because you got one little property in the mix of that would be different.
I don't want to make that particular change today unless we're going to change all of those properties along there and make it a transition. You know, I think that's what we typically try to do in a lot of neighborhoods, is make that transition from commercial to residential, and I won't have a problem doing that, but I don't know that voting today on that one small piece of property does what we wanted to do. So I'm not willing to do that today.
Yes.
I have a question, John. The intent is not to get into some whole different subject matter, but I don't know how else to ask the question. Do we have an issue with consistency? Just listening to what Mr. Roberts said, we had a case when some of us were not here back in 2016 that sounded as if the planning department recommended approval. Is something clouding my mind here with the issue of consistency on part of the recommendations that are?
I think that's the issue, Tommy, whether we live by the ordinance or we don't, or
Well,
whether.
but it sounded like they made a recommendation to approve.
We did, and I can explain the difference in that situation. In the sign ordinance, Loop 306 is one of those areas where new signs are allowed in CG zoning. The difference there was a property surrounded by CG zoning on Loop 306. So had it been rezoned to CG, a billboard would have been allowed. However, there were some homes immediately behind it. So in order to not open it up to all the CG uses, rather than rezone it to CG, we recommended a plan development that would keep it as an office zoning, but then allow the billboard. And so I think, again, the difference there is it was on one of the listed corridors where new billboards are generally allowed, but it was a way to protect the uses from that adjacent apartment complex.
The difference in this case is that they're not allowed in the Knickerbocker corridor.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I know I'm thoroughly confused, CJCH, neighborhood PD, whatever.
The sign ordinance.
Yeah, still comes down to the sign ordinance, as said. So with that, we are going to split the motion. We will have one motion for the zoning or possible postponement of zoning. And we're going to have one ordinance relative to the sign, one motion relative to the sign ordinance. Is that correct?
Relative to the sign, not the sign ordinance, but the sign, yes.
The sign.
And again, I would take the sign vote first, because that may play into which options are then available on the zoning.
Mayor?
Yes, Billy?
You know, I think Harry made a very good point about, and you did too, around those the other properties around there. So I just wonder, you mentioned the word postponement. Could we postpone making a decision on the zoning and just vote on the sign this morning? Can we do that?
Correct?
If we decide to change the zoning on the west portion of that, are we running into the same situation that we did when we started rezoning around the mall without other applicants' consent if they didn't come to us and ask for it, but the
Well,
city's
if-
making
if-
that decision?
Well, that's the reason we don't want to make that's why we're asking to postpone the decision on zoning.
But then if we
Today-
incorporate the other and they don't, if the property owner does not come to us and request that, then we're encroaching on their zoning. If this one's already in the works and we have the opportunity to do it now.
That's correct. If you wanted to look at rezoning a larger area, we would have to start a brand-new zoning case, going back to the beginning, notifying all of the property owners, going to planning commission, and then coming back to you.
Either way, it would have more of an opportunity there to fail if my constituents are asking for this portion to at least to be rezoned to a neighborhood commercial.
But it's just a very small part of it, and the only thing up right now for your constituents would be the very small piece of property behind the Sonic, not the entire property. Correct? And so the
Their eyes,
question
it's a
mark
stepping
is to
stone.
go ahead and postpone that decision to change the zoning so that we could open up the larger conversation on changing the zoning on the properties to the east, I guess that's east of the Sonic. Is that correct?
East of the Sonic is the
In
Car
the
wash.
west.
Car wash.
Whichever
west.
that
West.
piece of property is. And so the issue is, again, whether we just vote on a very small part of it or open up the conversation for a larger conversation about changing the back half of that property.
Another option you could consider is going, if you know what you want to do, you could vote on this particular property today since it's before you, and then ask staff to come back with some of the surrounding properties as a separate case. Or, as you mentioned, you could, I suppose, table this. I think the applicant would like an answer on the bigger question.
The sign.
Because that's really the impetus for this, I think.
That, then you have the opportunity to put the sign in and then an opportunity to come back later and deny moving down to a CN and keep it a CGCH. You have that risk of that failing and you still have heavy commercial and a sign.
Right. I mean, I think if, it sounds like the concern is the CH portion of this. At the very least, today you could vote to rezone it CG and then come and have a discussion later about CN on the backside.
That's
But
my main concern
But at
because I
least
know
you
that
get it
that
from
the-
CH to just CG.
I know that the compromise really entailed, okay, changing the sign to a static sign, but can we get a CN in the back? So if we get a sign and we come back later and it fails and it stays CGCH, then it's a lose-lose for them.
All right, what do we have as a motion on the floor? Because we don't have a second on whatever motion was made, and so someone repeat the motion on the floor, which did not get a second.
I made
And
the
it was
motion.
one motion that incorporated both, I believe.
I made the motion to accept the sign static on the property of the Sonic and changing the back portion of the Sonic to a neighborhood center.
With no second, that motion will not go forward.
wait a
So
minute.
you want to go ahead and,
That would allow the sign.
I would allow the sign and change it to the neighborhood center in the back. That is the compromise that the citizens came up with Lamar to get rid of heavy commercial.
I'll second Lane's motion.
there's a motion and a second. Is there public comment? If you citizens, if that's not what you wanted, now's your
Please.
chance to come forward and speak.
still have a second reading, so.
Let's try to get a compromise done today. That's what we would like to have happen. Our main concern when we found out about the sign was further encroachment. We would prefer that somebody that tries to work with the city and tries to work with the neighborhood at least get something. And Lamar has tried. And I understand the sign ordinance. I come from an area where we had to revamp an entire roadway to smaller signs, so I understand that. But these people have tried to work in good accord with us. And I think as in a good faith measure, as a homeowner in that area, I appreciate that. But I also fear for that piece of property coming back and becoming another car wash type situation that hit us square between the eyes without us knowing that it was going to happen. So what we're trying to do is look to the future. Let's protect those apartment dwellers that are right there, that if something else is built, it's going to be right in their backyard. It's a little bit further from me, but it still impacts me because of noise and traffic, and anything that you put in there is going to have some traffic and some noise, but let's try to keep it to something that everybody can live with. We can live with a neighborhood commercial, that would be good, and let them have their sign, same size, a little bit different place, but static. That's a compromise. It's not the best thing for us. We'd prefer not to have a sign. That would be great. There's enough signs on Knickerbocker, you can't swing a cat, not hit one. So let's try to give everybody something and make everybody happy, and then we can all go home today and say government worked. Thank you.
Mayor, can I add
Yes,
to that?
Teresa.
I guess my preference would be that if you do want to allow this sign, that you do go and modify this provision, because it does clearly say that off-site signs in CG and CG-CH districts are allowed in designated areas adjacent to the following thoroughfares. And then it lists A through H, North Bryant Boulevard, North Chadburn, Pulliam, South Chadburn, Loop 306 from Sherwood, east of the city limits, South Bryant Boulevard, Sherwood Way from Clare, and then Arden Road from Sherwood Way. So you will, in essence, be modifying this provision of this ordinance just through this particular action. And it leaves staff and myself and Dan, who works with planning, often unclear on how we are supposed to interpret this at that point. So there is ability to get compromise here. I just would not want to see you shortchange the process by doing that in a way that leaves uncertainty in what this provision actually means anymore.
So what
I
are
was
you
asking.
saying, that if we approve the sign the sign change, that in essence we're opening up Knickerbocker Road to further variances from the sign ordinance? Is that what you're saying?
I would say so, at least using this mechanism that's attempting to be used today to do so.
I agree
I
with
was
that.
asking about the terminology of new or net change.
It says allowed. And as John said, to be allowed, you have to get a permit. If this is a change that requires a permit, then they have to deny the permit under this provision if it's not in any of these areas.
That's the portion that needs to be looked at in the sign ordinance, is it new or is it net change? Net change of 1 is new. Net change of 0 could be interpreted
It doesn't
as-
say the words new or net change or any of that in here. It says are allowed, signs are allowed or not allowed. So it doesn't address, it's silent completely on whether or not you're taking down one sign and putting up a new one, all of those things. The trigger here, as John explained, is whether there's a permit required. To do what they want to do, there is a permit that will be required.
Just one second.
Well, I just wanted
Just
to
go
ask
ahead.
Teresa a question about that. So all of those corridors that you read off, those are where billboard signs can be placed? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, off-site signs, which is
So
what
we
we
have
covered.
plenty of areas in San Angelo where billboards can be placed?
Yes, ma'am.
They don't have to be on Knickerbocker Road?
They do not.
Thank you.
Please.
Again, Tommy Roberts with Lamar. Just want to make one comment. I mean, when I understand Teresa's comment, but whenever a plan development was used in 2016 to approve for a billboard inside of office commercial, the sign ordinance does not allow for billboards to be placed inside of office commercial. I don't think we've had any confusion or other sign operators trying to come in and place billboards inside of office commercial. And so that potentially could have opened up the sign ordinance to allow for billboards throughout the city, but that hasn't happened. And that's not the spirit of it. I mean, that's why we're asking for a variance here. We're not asking for a change in the sign ordinance. This is a one case, it's a case-by-case basis. And I don't feel like, I mean, I'm not an attorney, And but I do feel like based on past cases, it didn't open anything up in the past, and I don't feel like by approving this, it will open it up for billboards to just proliferate on Knickerbocker. And so, again, I would just ask for approval on that. And to your question, I mean, there are corridors for billboards to be allowed in San Angelo. There are other places. However, I mean, again, that's just why I'm here today, because I want, it's a valuable asset to Lamar. It's a valuable asset to the business community. It's one of 3 on Knickerbocker in this area, and we would just like to maintain it if we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Candy, were you going to come forward and speak? Uh-oh. Not willingly, but I saw you sort of lift up from the chair.
You feel the lashings already?
We're all feeling that.
Candy.
Candy Poole, Executive Vice President, San Angelo Association of Realtors, Mayor and Council. My concern is not about the sign. My concern is about the zoning. My concern is, and I don't know if Sonic he did say they would like to retain the zoning that they have, even though for 24 years they've done nothing with the back portion. It is my understanding that if we change the back portion of what they have today in their zoning, what they've always had, it's called down zoning. And I don't know if Sonic cares. If they don't care, maybe that's not an issue. But I do think that we need to be careful when we think about putting something commercial lower than it is. It will cause a difference in the value, and it could cause difference in how Sonic can use that piece of property. I understand very much about the residential, protecting it. There's apartments there, but I do think that we need to be careful about making a change that would downzone that one piece. I'm only talking about the Sonic piece. I'm not talking about anything else. That was all I had, Mayor.
Thank you. We are still open for conversation. Comments? Now, what we have on the floor, and someone's going to have to repeat it again. What is the motion on the floor?
Allow the sign, change to CN.
There's a second. There's public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Hand vote on that. 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 4. Motion denied. Now, can we go back and make a motion that is singularly about the sign versus the zoning?
Are we taking the zoning today too?
Yeah, I think you could make a motion to either allow or disallow the sign on this property. Then you could follow that up with addressing the zoning separately.
But why would we do that when we've already voted? John, I guess I'm getting more confused by the minute. Why would we now?
CHCOBOD.
There's
Well, why?
The motion
four
was
ways
to-
we can vote on
The
this.
motion was to approve something that failed. So another motion to do something different would still be on the table.
There's 4 ways that I see we can vote on it. Deny the sign, keep it CGCH. Accept the sign, keep it CGCH. Deny the sign, move it to neighborhood commercial. Deny the sign, keep it CGCH.
I think that's
That
the
ma-
problem
And-
right
and I
now.
think
We're
that's
trying to
why-
marry too many things.
Yes,
We
that
vote
is the
on
problem.
one item.
Right, and that's why I think it would be appropriate to vote yea or nay on the sign, and then after that's decided, then take a vote on the zoning.
Or we could take a vote on the signing and postpone the zoning.
Or we could uphold the vote we just took.
Yeah,
Right.
all of those things are out there.
You still have the thread, and I'm looking out for the constituents at that point. You have the thread of the CGCH to be maintained, which I guess that can come down to another vote.
What I think
We need to vote on whether we need to vote?
We already
wanna
voted,
leave it.
Tommy.
If you don't vote, everything stays the way it is currently.
So right now, with the vote taken, it is as is.
It would, if there's no other motions, it would effectively be a denial of the request.
Okay. Mayor.
Make it.
No, I'm not. I think we already voted. I'm done with it. But you know, for that neighborhood, the constituents, and I certainly appreciate what they're saying. But if we just protect the back of Sonic, aren't there homes and residences all down along that way? So we would just be protecting that 50.
Billy, that was my point. You're only doing this and you got
Exactly.
this.
So that's why I'm saying, seems like we just kind of need to go back to the drawing board for that and leave the
Look at the whole area.
motion, what we've already voted on as is. And then we'd have a second reading or not.
Oh,
I understand
Okay.
if it
All right.
fails, it would
Then
not
what
come to
would
a
come
second
back
reading.
to us would be the zoning deliberation, right?
If that's your direction, to direct staff to initiate a brand-new zoning case for a larger area, we could do that, but nothing would come back to you unless you give us that direction.
And that's the same thing we ran into with the mall, isn't that right, Candy?
Well, we didn't have a sign ordinance attached to it when we talked about Sunset Mall. It was simply a zoning issue. And here we have two very specifically different issues. One is a signage issue that's attached to a zoning issue. Sunset Mall was simply a zoning issue.
But if
It-
we, same instance on this, if we come back later, it would be one of those, yes, Sonic has already requested it, but this neighboring property has not. We went and looked at rezoning the mall and the surrounding areas without the consent of property owners.
Yes,
That's what we would be doing there.
we'd absolutely be doing that, yeah.
But couldn't we
We-
touch base with the property owners?
mean,
and-
yes,
Yeah,
you have
that's
the-
the
I mean, we
point.
wouldn't just vote on it
No,
without
they would get
touching base with them.
notifications, and all the surrounding properties would get notifications, and you have the authority under our ordinance and state law to initiate zoning on a property, not at the request of an applicant. So you clearly have the ability to do that. The question is is that, I think what Lane is suggesting is, do you really want to bite off that and take that up?
Well, I think we can open the door to it, and the public can tell us yes or no, and we can listen to people. But to the issue of trying to diminish, the issue on Sunset Mall as it is here, as a separate zoning issue, is do you reduce property value of the commercial property by changing the zoning or downgrading the zoning? So that's one issue. The second issue is, by changing the zoning, do you protect the neighborhood? And by protecting the neighborhood, you ensure that further heavy commercial cannot exist on that street. And we're separating that conversation from the conversation of the sign ordinance, which is not part of what we had any conversation on as it related to Sunset Mall. It was lowering the zoning, downgrading the zoning on Sunset Mall. So, are there further questions or comments? I've spoken enough. Well, we've denied it.
A motion of some sort.
As John mentioned a while ago, we don't need a motion. We can leave it the way it is at this point. And if council directs us to move forward and take a look at maybe changing the zoning in the future land use, then staff can do that. But if we don't take another vote, it stays the way it is at this point.
And it can come back, one as a request for a signage variance as one issue, and it can come back as a request for rezoning as well. But let me ask you a question. At this point, the existing sign, and this, if Lamar could answer this one for me, because one of the issues for Lamar and Tommy was the request to move the existing billboard to a new location, but with this vote, you could still maintain the existing billboard that's there, correct?
We're scheduled to dismantle that structure tomorrow.
And why is that? I mean, why did you come to that decision if you knew that this was part of the sign ordinance? Because I would think as a business owner, you would protect yourself before you did this?
Well, it's a gamble, but I'll tell you, our landowner there is USAA out of San Antonio, so it's very corporate. When it's a year-to-year lease, I think they have some intent to place something on their property that's not a billboard, and so we are vacating that property. And so I don't know exactly what that is. I think some indication might be a cell tower, so I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's we've been asked to vacate, and so that's what we're doing.
Okay, did everybody hear that?
But and like I said, I don't know that for sure, and I'm sorry. I don't,
tower
I'm
or
not
sign.
gonna say. I don't know what that is, but I
can-
do want to make one comment to answer Lane's question from earlier. The way the permit, or the way the application stands now, is that we revised it from CGCH down to CG. And so if there is a vote taken on the sign, you are effectively lowering the intensity of the use for that property because that's attached to it. So I know there is some discussion about neighborhood commercial in the back. However, if you do take a vote on just moving the sign, I mean, automatically, and John can maybe speak to this, or Teresa, because the application is for general commercial to lower the intensity, I know that would probably go along with the use of the approval. And so at least we would get the usage of the property down from, we would move heavy commercial with the approval of the sign being moved, regardless.
I think, Linda, please come forward. You have another comment.
About the property values of the people that live on Parkview Lakes. We're talking about the value of the property of Mr. Moore, who owns Sonic, which is a viable question. When he bought that, he knew that he had to look at the market. Is it going to be a good property? Is it going to be a bad property? Nobody knows. Maybe nobody will ever want to put anything on that property. That's a big if. I live in my property. So does Ms. Mertz. There's no if about our property value. My property value was devalued almost $20,000 when that car wash was put up because of the noise that comes down the street. You have to weigh the property value for the commercial and the property value of the homeowner. None of the other is more important, probably, in your view than the other, but it's personal to us. It's our homes. And when I heard cell tower just then, I wanted to vomit. It's bad enough I've got a car wash, and now I'm trying to keep something else like a dog hospital from being put across the street from the apartment complex. And I do have a list of the things that can be put there, and I'm sure you can pull it up on your computer, and none of them would be something you'd want in your neighborhood. We rode around the other day and found a veterinary hospital next door to a house. I thought, how did that get done? Oh, gee, let's don't let that happen to us. We're not saying we're opposed to commercialism. We're not saying we're opposed to people who own property on Knickerbocker getting the best out of it. Of course, we all want that. That keeps San Angelo valid and viable, and it's growing, and that's great. But people got to live somewhere. People have got to live somewhere, and we have chosen to live there. And we were there before Sonic. We were there before Julio's. We were there before, God forbid, the cell tower. And we're going to be there for a long time, and we pay a lot for property taxes. Thank you.
And I think our point on that vote is to not, if you will, call spot zoning, that if we're going to change the zoning on one little piece, wouldn't it be in the best interest of the neighborhood to look at that whole area? And that's really what we're talking about is the fact that you do one small part of what is, you know, one large street that's zoned all the same. So our intent is to relook at the larger scale of that versus the smaller scale and come to a conclusion on that. And that's really the conversation instead of a small percentage of the total property on Sweetbriar Circle. Okay, Steve, come on up.
Steve Hampton, sorry to add to the pile, but it seems to me that you've got a government's in the way. The ordinance is flawed, and then your spot zoning a situation. Everybody, other people are in agreement on what might be a solution, and yet the government is in the way. So
We're trying to get out of the way.
I know you're trying to get out of the way with, but planning or postponing it might be the solution, and then changing your ordinance.
Well, I would like to point out, Mayor, if I may, that
Sure.
on this CGCH district, this is one of those districts you can't request a property to be zoned to. The whole intent of that was to I always think of it as a wait and see ordinance, see what happens around these areas. And then the city council is given the authority within the ordinance through a comp plan change to decide what those properties are going to be. So your thought that looking at directing staff to look at what that should actually be and doing a whole rezoning of that area seems like it's appropriate and would be a good step to move forward on at this point, and is what the ordinance actually intended.
Well, that's what I think I want to make sure we do, is instead of taking this piece, we look at this piece and approach it from a larger scale perspective and not singularly putting a piece of property
That's what staff
and the
did.
whole of what exists there. So that's really what I think this vote was somewhat about.
That's what staff did by recommending
Right, that's what
Right,
staff
John?
did on a very small parcel.
In a
but
small
what
part. We're
the
saying on a
ordinance
larger
says-
scale.
It says it's intended that areas within CGCH zoning districts will be changed to other zoning districts based on comprehensive land use plans adopted by city council. So to me, that doesn't speak to individual parcel by parcel, property by property changes, but that as a general rule, it will be looked at as a whole.
And that's what I think we wanted to do today.
You'd have to look at the future land use and amend it if necessary to make it what we feel it should be in that area, specifically to protect all those homeowners or people that live in that area. That's actually the broader way of doing it, though. But we talked about. I'll just say this very quickly because it's brought up about the cell tower in that area, and I just want to be mindful that if a cell tower would go up, and I'd have to look at it even if it's allowed there, if a cell tower did go up, then you'd have a cell tower and a billboard right next to each other. So that's a concern for me as well.
Okay, so Teresa, Julia, help me with this. So we've voted against the item E.
Can I make two motions? Is that what we're looking for? Two different ones? Maybe. I love that lawyer answer. Okay. I will move, first motion, I will move to accept the sign. Second motion, I will move to.
Can we make two at once or do one at a time?
Go ahead and take a vote on that motion.
One
Can I make it
motion
right
at a
after
time.
the
We need a
vote?
second to accept the sign.
Okay.
Is it to
To
accept the
accept
sign
sign.
and direct staff to amend the ordinance?
I'm gonna make one
Not
before.
amend the ordinance.
I'm gonna make one right after. I'm just gonna make it. Second one is going to be to change to neighborhood commercial. First one, accept the sign. I move to accept the sign.
It's the same thing as what the other motion is. You just split it in part.
That's what,
But we
He's
voted
trying a different
no.
approach.
that's what I would move to approve is the same compromise, but that allows people to split out their votes from those four different areas. If they don't like accept the sign, change to CN, but they liked it where it was accept the sign or keep it general commercial, or deny the sign, keep it general commercial.
Trying to split out and vote on the sign.
Puts it out.
Steve, did you want to make a comment?
You ought to be on this side.
So instead of two different
Go ahead,
ways
Steve.
you can do it, it's four.
I don't have an opinion. I don't have a dog in this fight at all. But I will say that if we do try to rezone a large area without the property owner's desire to do that, we're getting on a slippery slope.
That's what we don't want to do, and that was our point, was that
Okay, I'm just saying, if you try to force a zoning on people that are not here, that are not wanting to rezone their
Why I brought
property,
up the mall.
you're
Well,
getting on a slippery slope.
well, and the point that
Yeah,
we
I
were
don't see
talking
any problem
about
with-
is a small part of a bigger part, and so you're not helping the neighborhood by only attacking a very small part of what is a very large zoning issue.
I understand.
And so the issue is, it might make the homeowners feel better that we change
I
the
agree, but-
small Sonic land to a different zoning, but there's still a lot of zoning that remains the same that would allow for heavy commercial. And so the approach was to not change the zoning on a small part that won't change what's done next to it.
And I don't have any problem if the property owner wants to do that small PC in. I'm just saying it's dangerous to start including other properties that are not in this battle at all. That's
Or
all
a
I'm
small
gonna say.
part that doesn't eliminate the development right
The other
next to
part,
it.
yeah.
Because what could happen next to that Sonic property, even though we changed the zoning, somebody big can come in and do heavy commercial next to the Sonic land. And so you don't solve the neighborhood concern, you just solve a small part of the neighborhood concern. And I think the approach of council is, let's solve the larger problem to help the neighborhood out instead of a small strip of property, which still allows for the problem to develop next to it. That's all.
I'm just going with the
that's what we said.
I'm just going with the compromise that
Was that on me or Lane?
I think that's on the whole council.
Yeah.
It's not the whole issue.
It's worn out.
Yeah.
Does that mean I can go home?
So what was your motion, Lane?
First one was to accept the sign, second one is to change to neighborhood commercial.
So I can support the first one. I can second moving the sign.
And I'll second the.
Wait a minute, don't we have to
Wait a
vote?
minute, we
She
have
said-
one motion at a time. We can't have multiple motions on the floor at the
I thought
time.
we were waiting.
So we can have one motion, and that motion right now, based off of what I think Harry said, is that we're gonna take a vote on allowing the sign to be moved from its current location, which is planned for demolishing tomorrow,
Yes.
to the Sonic
As a
location.
static sign?
And it would
Static
be
sign.
a static sign, not a electric sign or digital sign. So this motion on the floor is for a change of location of an existing sign, correct? Correct. And is there a second?
I'll second
Lane
that.
made the motion, I seconded it.
Harry
Okay,
seconded.
and now a vote, a voice.
I just want to follow up with talking about the removal of the structure tomorrow. So part of that is with the state, also, we have to get a state permit from TxDOT for the structure. And so what they do is they've already come out and inspected the location. Once they inspect it, you can't have two conflicting permits within 300 feet of each other. So they give us 30 days to resolve that. And so part of our taking it down is to get our state permit as well. And so that kind of goes to the timing of it also. So just so there's a little bit more clarification on why we're taking it down right now. Thank you.
It was gonna come down anyway, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Regardless.
Regardless if it was 30 days or how many days, it was still gonna come down.
That's
Okay,
correct.
just wanna make sure that clear.
Okay, now, Mayor,
Yes, please.
I have another question. So with us violating the conditions of our sign ordinance, what does that mean for us, John?
Well, the short answer is that plan developments are often used to allow things that aren't typically allowed under the zoning, subdivision, or sign ordinances. I think our caution and our recommendation for denial on this is we think that should be very rarely used. And in this case, we don't think it's appropriate to circumvent the sign ordinance through this mechanism. That's not to say, and I defer to Teresa on the legality of what the limits of your authority are, but you have some authority to modify other ordinances through a planned development district.
We're not voting on making it a planned development today.
Well, yes, if you approve the sign, what you're doing is, in effect, you're approving a planned
Doesn't make
development
sense.
that allows the sign. Because you're not addressing the sign ordinance today. What's before you today is a rezoning. The only way to allow a sign at this location through a rezoning is through a planned development.
That's not on the motion.
Well, as I took the motion, it's to approve a sign through the planned development as requested. In a technical.
See, every time we ask a question, it's hard to get it all clear, but I don't think we were wanting to vote on the plan development, so that means no sign.
Correct.
So I'm back to my first point. We took a vote on this whole thing, and I don't know why we can't stick with that and then give staff some direction on looking at a larger property. And maybe the look at will be what was said earlier, that the landowners on the commercial CG, whatever that is, would not want to do that. But I don't know. I think we are compromising our current sign ordinance to vote to move the sign. And I don't think we should do that. And to Mr. Hampton's point, government's getting in the way, but government has already decided this in a previous sign ordinance that's on the books. And I think we should uphold that.
And if I may add to that, the sign was coming down. That's what it came down to. And they're looking for a way to take it somewhere else. And this is really the crux of the situation at this point, is that sign was coming down. And they don't want to lose that sign in that area. So that's why they're proposing a new sign. It's not an exchange, but a new sign a little bit further down. So again, it is circumventing.
Sign ordinance.
It is circumventing.
And Teresa read off about 6 or 7 corridors where billboard signs are acceptable. And, you know, I just think that's something that should be considered. So if we need to keep this billboard, then let's look at who has some property that perhaps this billboard could be placed on.
We agree with that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor that in essence would be allowing for a zoning change to PD to allow for a sign change in moving a sign, not allowed in the sign ordinance. Is that correct?
Going to PD would allow the sign and allow what in the back?
I think, as I understood it, your two different motions.
We can only do one at a time.
Right.
Talk about the first.
Now we're talking
Your
plan
first
development.
motion would not actually be to approve the PD. It's simply a question for the council, do you approve of including the sign in the PD or not? Then your second motion would be, what is the
change it to
zoning in the PD?
Okay. First one is to allow the sign in the PD. Seconded by Harry.
Well, wouldn't it have to be changed? It's not PD now. Wouldn't it have to be changed to PD?
And then we would change it to my next motion, which would, or vote on changing it to the next motion of neighborhood commercial.
But we can't bring back the same motion that we'd already had, and
We
that's
voted
what that would
against.
do.
Life gets complicated, and so do ordinances and government, so, but this is where we're at. So at this point, let me make sure we're all clear on what we can or cannot do here. What we cannot do is re-vote on what we already voted no on.
Correct.
And we already voted no on the PD.
It wasn't stated that way, but in essence, that's
It
what
was, because we denied,
We voted,
its PD was in the,
we voted no on the planning development that would make it neighborhood commercial.
we voted no on that.
Yes.
So we've already said no on that, so we can't bring it back for another vote, because we've already said no. Correct?
You said no to the sign and the neighborhood commercial.
Yes, to what was on this.
You could approve a sign but with CG, or you could approve no sign with neighborhood commercial, or no sign with CG, as Lane's 4 options he mentioned.
What's not up is PD.
Well, but if,
They're all,
Yeah,
They're all,
they're all
planning.
they are, no matter what.
it would be planned development regardless if that's what it's gonna take to get the sign moved.
But then you would have a choice of CG or CN.
But not on that motion,
Or to keep it CH.
but not on the motion that we already took. Because
Right.
the motion had PD and moving the sign.
Didn't the first motion also indicate that we were going to change this back here to commercial, neighborhood commercial?
No.
It did
No.
not. It's as read.
My
Yes.
first
Oh, it-
one.
It was, that's what I'm saying, Mayor, is
Yeah,
that-
that's what he said first.
My first one is accept the sign and change to neighborhood center.
Where the
We
confusion,
voted no on
I
that.
voted no, but
where the confusion comes in is that PD was not mentioned, but however, in order to make the change, it would be through PD though, is what you're saying.
But we voted no on the neighborhood center, which we probably should have worded it different.
Yeah,
but-
you voted no on the whole package as Lane presented it.
that was the whole package. We can
Right.
still change it. That was a package deal.
But if your motion that you just put on the floor, if you say move the sign, then it goes back to PD, right?
No, PD is like, it's like the box that it's all in.
Yeah.
It's the plan development. What we're trying to figure out is what the two pieces are. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, he
It was a
saying
mic,
Mike.
yeah,
Oh,
he's being the
I'm
mic.
sorry, Billy. We're just having a conversation right now. The PD is like the whole package.
Okay.
And what you're trying to figure out is what pieces go within that package. Whether it's a sign or no sign goes in that package, and whether it's a CG or CH goes in that package, or whether it's a neighborhood commercial goes in that package. You've already said, we're not gonna say sign neighborhood commercial. Now you can decide whether it's sign or no sign, and then those other two things.
But instead of going through all the different combinations, I think it would be best to have, like your original motion, vote yes or no on the sign. Then once that's decided, then you know what options are available for the zoning.
That's one
So
way.
it's already a no
Could've voted
for
5 times.
sign and CN. So
Vote
now I can
sign,
say,
CG, sign, CH, no sign, CG, no sign, CH.
But I think a vote on the consensus of the council on the sign simplifies the decision. If the council, there's so many options to go through.
we do sign. If we do sign, that's why I made the motion first to go CN. But if we do sign, you still have the option, that's why I was making two motions, of sign for the first one and accepting the neighborhood center as the second one. And then people could vote yay or nay on that.
Can we, go ahead, can we do the following? Can we accept the fact that we voted no on item E? And can we bring back at the next council meeting, item E broken down into two portions?
So we would table it.
So we would table it to the next, well, we've already voted no
Vote
on
on it,
this.
you can't bring it back till 6 months.
Yes,
We-
and we already have a motion and a second, so we would need both of those withdrawn.
Well, I guess I don't know why I can't get this through my head, but if we vote yes on the sign to be moved, are we not violating our current sign ordinance?
You will be allowing a sign in a location where our sign ordinance does not allow it. The only way, as John said, to do that is through a PD. But consistently, it's been decided that we're not going to use a PD to put one of those billboards in a location it otherwise wouldn't have been allowed. So I'm not familiar exactly with the one that John described earlier, but in the earlier case where it was allowed through a PD, that was in a corridor where a billboard would have been allowed anyway. It was not a corridor where they're not allowed.
Right, and this is I guess my whole issue is why have ordinances if we are going to constantly be making exceptions to the ordinance? So we have corridors within our sign ordinance where a billboard could go. So why in the world would we want to move this one in an area where it's not supposed to go according to our ordinance? That makes no sense to me. I'm sorry. And I'm done.
Okay, with that, the motion on the floor is,
To allow the static sign to be moved via the plan development.
If that passes, we have the chance to designate CG or CN.
Not seeing.
But if it doesn't pass, you still have the opportunity to designate CHCN, just don't allow the sign to move.
all right, we're going to take a vote. Is there any public comment on
Add one more
trying to approve a PD which allows for the sign to be moved and put up?
Again, Teresa.
If you don't approve the sign, you still have the opportunity to do a PD that changes the zoning, correct? Only the sign's not a component of it.
Approve the sign, and I'll make my second motion. The CN, I can do that or can't?
You cannot, you've already done that.
But that was in one motion, not two.
But you're not voting, you're voting on one PD. You're taking two votes right now to figure out what goes in your PD
That
box.
just allows me to take the stance that I'm taking for my constituents.
I understand.
So now,
But your constituent said she'd be happy having no sign.
but they still want, now we're flip-flopping the compromise, whether it be keeping CGCH and no sign, but I'm pretty sure they would rather have a sign and CN. Is that right, Ms. Wilson?
But he could make a motion to have CN, right?
If the sign fails.
If the sign
Sign fails.
If the sign fails, you could have CN.
All right, there's a motion on the floor and a second that would allow the PD to be approved, allowing the sign to be moved, which would be against the sign ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now I'm stuck to voting for a sign and
Now,
potentially
what we have
keeping
is
CH.
the motion, the second. We've had a lot of public comment. We're going to take a vote. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Could we get hands? It's 3 against.
Yeah, all in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4 against. 1, 2, 3. Motion passes to go against the sign ordinance and create a PD allowing the sign to be moved. Is that correct?
So now we can do zoning. Do general commercial. Good thing we have 2 readings to this.
I think your options are
Well, I
leaving it
can't-
the same or going to CG.
And I would definitely say I will make a motion to make downgrade from CGCH to just CG.
I'll second.
Is there public comment? No public comment. We'll take a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-3.
What is allowed in CG?
We've already
Little
voted
late.
on the item.
Email me. Text me.
You want to take a break?
We're almost there, Mayor.
Let's go.
F, first reading and public hearing of an ordinance approving the abandonment and vacation of a 15-foot wide by 400-foot long, 6,000 square feet public alley located east of Bowie Street and south of East 44th Street within Block 38 of the Lakeview Addition.
Thank you. John James, Director of Planning and Development Services. I'll go quick on this one. This is an existing alley right-of-way. There's really no constructed alley in there, and adjacent property owners want to abandon the alley to incorporate that into those adjacent properties. So there's the abandonment, the original lots. I'm not going to read through all of these. Staff recommends approval. This is reviewed by all the utility companies and various city departments. There are no city utilities. Let me go back to this. Frontier and AEP do have utilities in there, and so we would require a utility easement to be maintained where the alley sits today if you abandon it. We sent out our notifications, 2 in favor, 1 in opposition. I think we think that person misunderstood what was being requested. So we recommend approval, and the Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval. Be happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for John on this item? What was the opposition comments?
I think that was someone who misunderstood what the request was. But they really weren't opposed, and they're not affected by the alley closure. They're a block over.
Okay. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second. Public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is Ann Joseph. I have been a resident of San Angelo since 1987. I am in support of this ordinance and wanted to just be a supporting voice appearing here in support of the abandonment and vacation of the alleyway within Block 38 of the Lakeview addition. Just as a little addendum or background, the real estate office for COSA sent out a letter dated 4 February identifying an assessment formula for Block 38 property owners, apprising us of the cost for each of us to purchase the alleyway square footage if the alleyway were to be abandoned and vacated by the city. So on 13 February, I went out and spoke with every property owner or family member within Block 38 who had not as yet contacted the real estate office to either state, yes, I want to buy the property, or I want to assign my interest. Everyone's sole question was not whether or not it should be abandoned, but rather whether or not they wanted to buy the adjoining footage, or if they would assign it. Based on those interactions with, as I said, everyone on Block 38 that's either a property owner or a family owner, it appears that no one on Block 38 is against the abandonment. Therefore, I request your support of this ordinance to abandon and vacate the alleyway within Block 38 of the Lakeview addition. Thank you.
Thank you for being patient and hanging around all morning long. We appreciate
I had
that.
to change my greeting of good morning to good afternoon.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I thought she was going to learn something about zoning.
Okay, with that, we will take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Item G, consider awarding contracts for services related to the Hickory Groundwater Expansion Project and potential funding from Texas Water Development Board, and authorizing the city manager to execute any related documents. 1, RFPWU-02-19, bond counsel to McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. 2, RFPWU-0319, financial advisor to Specialized Public Finance. And 3, RFQWU-04-19, engineering services for water system improvements to Improtech, Hibbs, and Todd. And Allison, my dear, you're on.
I also, too, was going to say good morning, but good afternoon. As y'all are aware, we're steadfast with expanding the Hickory groundwater system. Those expansions include, sorry, let me get my slide going. Those expansion upgrades include expansion of the well field, pump station, and treatment facilities to be able to pump and treat our full allocation from our permits. As with the previous $120 million that was invested in this system, we are looking to utilize Texas Water Development Board funding. Texas Water Development Board provides low-interest loans with longer repayment periods for water projects that are in the state water plan. And the Hickory groundwater expansion is one of those projects that's in the state water plan. One of the first steps in starting this application process is to put out requests for proposals and qualifications for bond counsel, financial advisors, and engineering services. I want to preface kind of my short presentation is that for the next council meeting, we'll be bringing back the preliminary engineering study findings that'll go really into depth about the number of wells we'll be drilling, the cost associated with that, the treatment. It'll go really into the meat of the application, whereas this is basically getting that team together for that application process. So for today, we're simply asking you to approve the qualifications and proposals that were submitted for these three entities. And like I said, at the next council meeting, we'll be bringing back the expansion in more detail associated upgrades and cost. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Do I have questions from council for Allison?
To approve as presented.
Any public comment on the proposed contracts? With none, we'll take a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 7-0. We'll now have item H, update on sales tax revenue and performance.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, Mr. Valenzuela. I have your February sales tax results for you today. And you'll see here that we were down 6.8% in February compared with the same month in the prior year. However, we are still above our revenue budget by about $556,000 year to date. And I also have for you your industry stats for the month of January. And that's all I have for you today. If you have any questions.
Is this a dollar volume or is it percent? It's a dollar volume, right?
These are percentages.
Well, how does that chart on the left read as a percentage then?
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right, it's dollar values.
Dollar values. So the question mark is, we were down 6.9%, but retail was up, general services looked like about flat, food was up, professional services was up.
Now, this was for the month of January, I'm sorry. We don't get this information in time to report it on your monthly basis, so this was the month of January where we were up on sales tax revenue.
Okay, so just to make
sorry,
sure,
we're-
when
yeah.
you say we were down, these numbers are not reflective of the down, because these numbers don't reflect we would be down.
So we were down 6.8% for the month of February. The numbers that you're seeing on the next slide are actually for the month of January because we lag behind on the industry information.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It
Thank you.
Any further questions for Tina? Thank you very much.
Tina, can you really quickly just put this slide back? I wanted to
Yes,
see
ma'am.
what the budget was over.
Wrong way.
Oh,
$556,497 year to
thank
date.
you.
Lucy's already looking where we can spend it.
Lucy's talking like she's trying to build a car wash or a cell tower over there.
I need to go get a car wash.
Okay, with that,
Church,
we are
school,
going
bar.
to adjourn for closed session. The executive session under the provision of Government Code Title V, Open Government Ethics, Subtitle A, Open Government, Chapter 551, Open Meetings, Subchapter D, Exceptions to Requirement that meetings be open under the following sections. Section 551.072, to deliberate the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if deliberation in an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governmental body in negotiations with a third person on 1, the Gillis Addition, 2, City Farm, 3, 122 West First Street, 4, Spring Creek Marino, and item B, section 551.074A1, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee regarding 1, board commissions and appointments, and 2, appointing Judge J. Daniels as presiding judge of the City of San Angelo Municipal Court, effective January 28, 2019, City Charter, Section 50, and C, Section 551.0712, to consult with an attorney when the governmental body seeks the advice of its attorney on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the governmental body under the Texas disciplinary rules of professional conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with this chapter regarding contract negotiations with court consultant. We are officially adjourned for closed session at 12:40 a.m. We will be gone for 1 hour, 15 minutes, so we will be back at 2 o'clock.
PM.
We will be adjourned at 2:12 actually, p.m.
We set a record today. We did.